Warrior Lore. Chapter 3679. His soul power began to vibrate, forming waves of intense fluctuations. Noah felt as if his body had suffered countless impacts, and his internal organs seemed to be displaced. Bang! His soul power vibrated out, and Noah's body flew backward. In midair, a line of blood streaked across. The surroundings immediately became incomparably quiet, and everyone looked at the scene in shock. The speed of this reversal was a little too fast. Noah's body flipped several times in midair, and then landed firmly on the ground. He looked like he was vomiting blood, but his injuries were not as serious as imagined. His originally cold expression had an additional hint of ferocity at this moment. Clearly, Zichen's actions had completely infuriated him. "Brat, I'll definitely tear you into pieces today." The aura around his body became berserk once again. It was like a raging tornado as boundless soul power revolved around his body. Ternary technique. A cold voice sounded, and 3 rays of light flew out from Noah's body, like 3 soul-binding chains, flying forward. During this time, the 3 rays of light intertwined, as if forming a giant python. Looking at the incoming attack, Zichen took a deep breath and slapped out again. Soul split. The giant python approached and came into contact with the palm print. There was no huge tremor, only the sound of air being torn apart. Several runes appeared in Zichen's palm, like the most terrifying sharp blade in the world, directly splitting the giant python into several parts. His soul power dissipated, and the giant python disappeared. Zichen's face turned slightly pale. This soul split technique was indeed powerful, but the consumption was not small. The crowd watching the battle in the distance was nervous, and at the same time, they were all shocked. Both sides were clearly 2 realms apart, but they were evenly matched. Humph! Noah snorted coldly again, and said indifferently, "Let's see how many times you can block." 6 directions. 6 rays of light appeared in front of Noah, twisting in midair. This time, when they turned into a giant python, there were flames burning on the surface of the python, and its power was much more terrifying than before. Facing this attack, Zichen could only use Soul Split again, which was the most powerful soul technique he had mastered at present. Under Zichen's perception, several streaks of soul power flew out from his palm like sharp weapons, slicing forward. However, this giant python with flames around its body was obviously much stronger than before. It was obviously impossible for the soul-splitting technique to easily split it apart. Boom! Powerful soul power erupted, causing the fire python's body to collapse. The powerful energy instantly engulfed Zichen. Engulfed by the vast energy, Zichen felt that he had lost control of his body and was sent flying. After landing, his body rolled a few more times. "Leader!" The people of Kata village at the back started to shout. They were very worried. Looking at Zichen on the ground, Noah smiled disdainfully and said, "That's it? You're too weak." His eyes were filled with killing intent. "Next, I'll kill you in 1 move." Shanya, who had heard this, rushed forward. Obviously, she did not want Zichen to be killed. Shan Er, on the other hand, held her back tightly. "Don't be impulsive. Outsiders can't interfere in this kind of battle." "Are we just going to watch our leader get killed?" Shan Ya's face was filled with tears. Shan Er shook his head and smiled bitterly. "If it's just a challenge, our leader still has a glimmer of hope. But if we interfere, even that glimmer of hope will be gone." Compared to the dozens of soul hunters on Kata's side, Noah's side had a sea of soul hunters. It was clear at a glance who was stronger and who was weaker. Shanya was still unwilling, but she was no longer as impulsive as before. Because Zichen stood up again, but his face was very pale, and he was much weaker. "Go to hell." 9 streaks. 9 streaks of light flew out from Noah's body. This time, they directly turned into a giant fire python. The fire python was releasing a terrifying heat, and its power was even stronger than before. Facing this terrifying attack, Zichen's expression changed significantly. He crossed his hands in front of him, forming a defense. Imperial Soul Shield. Runes appeared on the light shield that was formed. The runes flickered with a bright light, causing the original defense to be strengthened by several times. The fire python approached with blazing heat, and the surrounding space was distorted. Many people in the distance were amazed, thinking that Noah was indeed the strongest in this area. His combat strength was too terrifying. Many people were shaking their heads. Obviously, they were not optimistic about Zichun. The fire python arrived, and countless flames drowned Zichun. A scream was heard. It was Zichun. Noah looked complacent. Looking at the place where countless flames were raging in front of him, he said confidently, "Humph, he's dead for sure." In the crowd, Isa let out a sigh, and there was a look of regret in his eyes. In his heart, he actually hoped that Zichun could win. Compared to Noah, Iza wanted to deal with Zichun more. Zichun was trustworthy and more affectionate. He was much better than Noah. Unfortunately, the gap between their realms was too big. Shanya covered her mouth and wept silently. Beside her, many of the villagers were crying. Even Shanair had tears in his eyes. Zichun had helped them too much. Unfortunately, they could do nothing now. They could only watch Zichun die here. Noah looked up at the sealed divine soul heaven grinder and said with a smile, "You will always be mine. No one can take you away from me. Whoever dares to do anything to you must die." Suddenly, there were exclamations from all around. "He's not dead. He's not dead yet." Noah frowned slightly when he heard that and looked ahead. The flames had dispersed, and Zichun was still standing there. His aura was very weak, but he was still alive and standing. The black robe on his body emitted wisps of smoke, and there were still flames on his body. "I'm surprised that you're not dead." Noah smiled faintly and said disdainfully, "But so what? It's just one more attack." However, at that moment, a black light flashed in front of Zichun. More than 10 life spirit fruits appeared. Without hesitation, he stuffed them into his mouth. His mouth was full. Everyone looked at this scene in shock. Zichun's actions were like the reincarnation of a hungry ghost. "Do you think it's possible to break through to the next realm?" Noah guessed Zichun's thoughts. He smiled coldly and attacked again. It was still the 9 paths. The fire python appeared again. Its aura surged and drowned Zichun. Zichun let out another blood-curdling scream. Many people could not bear to look at the scene. Perhaps Zichun had already turned into ashes? At this moment, the flames dispersed. Zichun was still standing there. He was swaying but did not fall. Many people had astonished expressions on their faces. Noah also frowned, and his eyes became colder. "Go to hell," he shouted angrily again, and used the power of the 9 paths again. It was more powerful. Zichun's body was completely enveloped in flames. Noah sneered, looking very confident. The flames disappeared. Zichun was still standing there. However, his aura was extremely weak. He was only a step away from death. "It seems that you didn't eat the life spirit fruits at the last minute." Noah sneered. "Is that enough?" Zichun's voice was very weak. "What?" Noah looked at Zichun and said, "That's enough. My goal is to kill you." Chapter 3680. Heaven is in the cycle of reincarnation. Who did God let go of? Dalt, who had once been glorious, glanced at Noah, who was in a daze, and turned to leave. He could understand Noah's state of mind because more than 20 years ago, he was like Noah today. At that time, he even wanted to die and felt that there was no future in life. As soon as he left, the others followed him. The crowd dispersed one after another. However, many of them glanced at Noah gloatingly before they left, especially those from the neighboring villages. During this period of time, Noah had been suppressing them too much, and they had long complained about it. Now that they no longer had the heaven-grinding spirit, everyone was naturally happy. Moreover, Kada was very close to them, so at least they could save some time on the journey. After Kada's light rain dissipated, Zichun found a problem. Every time he broke through, Shanya would naturally break through as well. As for Vern and Clark, they would follow closely behind, but their realms were often lower than Shanya's. At this moment, dozens of villagers were all gathered around the divine soul heaven grind, and each of them looked extremely excited. In this area, the divine soul heaven grind was the most supreme, and it indicated an unlimited future. At this moment, the divine soul heaven grind was slowly operating. During this period, The soul power from heaven and earth was crushed by the heaven grind, turning into pure energy that filled the surroundings. Zichen looked at the excited crowd and said with a smile, "Try releasing a few soul-eating beasts." Today, Shanya had hunted several soul-eating beasts. She had used one earlier, but there were still a few left, so she took them all out. Near them, these soul-eating beasts were attracted by an inexplicable force and flew toward the top of the divine soul heaven grind. Then, the heaven grind began to accelerate, and with a strong burst of soul power, life spirit fruits appeared one after another. Seeing these life spirit fruits, Kata was in an uproar. Noah had left. He led his team back to where they came from. Although there were no fewer people this time, the people of the Noah tribe had lost their previous momentum. Everyone was dejected because they had lost the foundation of their strength. After returning to Noah, the soul power here was indeed much thinner, and this situation would continue to be the case. After returning to the tribe, Noah said coldly, "Go and drive away all those trash. We, Noah, don't want trash." Obviously, he, Noah, had lost to Zichen both in the open and in the dark. In that case, the people he had spent so much effort to recruit would naturally be of no use. "All right." Nelson immediately nodded, turned around and ordered the people next to him, "Go and get rid of those trash from Kata." Someone immediately went to carry it out. Brother Gu and the others were once again met with despair. On the same day, quite a few villages began to send soul-devouring beasts over. Just as Zichen had said, they were free of charge for the first few days. Shan was specifically in charge of this matter. He was responsible for registering at the side. However, it was obvious that there were not enough people in Kata. On that day, Shanya also helped out. Early the next morning, Kata became extremely lively. People came one after another to exchange for life spirit fruits. Among them, Ija and Getten were the first to arrive. When the two of them were exchanging, they also sent many people to help. Zichen was chatting with the two chiefs. Suddenly, a cold voice came from outside the door. "Chief, someone is coming." Hearing the cold tone of the other party, Zichen, who could vaguely guess the reason, said, "We welcome everyone to come and exchange." The other party obviously understood Zichen's meaning and shouted from afar, "Kata is an important place. Unauthorized people are not allowed to enter." "Sir, we were wrong. We are here to apologize." A voice with soul power came from outside the village. It was Brother Gu. Zichen's expression did not change. He pretended not to hear. Ija sneered at the side. "Those idiots are no longer of any use. They were driven out." Gitten also mocked. "Don't you know what you're worth? The arrogant Noah doesn't put any villages in his eyes. Why would he care about you?" Shan glanced at Zichen. When he saw that he did not say anything, he did not care about this matter anymore. Brother Gu and the rest stood outside. Facing the strange gazes of the passers-by, they looked very ashamed. There was a person guarding the door, looking at Brother Gu and the rest with a mocking expression. At that time, they had taken the initiative to abandon Kata. Brother Gu was very ashamed. Along the way, they had tried to join other villages. After all, many of them were soul hunters. Unfortunately, no one wanted them. It was not that they did not want to, but they did not dare to. This was because everyone knew that Zichen was now the #1 person in this area. If they recruited this group of ungrateful people, what would they do if Zichen was unhappy? Zichen did not care about Brother Gu, but he did not chase him away either. He allowed them to apologize outside. Now that Zichen was the chief, the others would not say anything. In fact, many of them wanted to chase these people away because they were an eyesore. The sky was getting dark. Shanya, who had just returned from hunting, did not have a pleasant expression when she saw these people. Under the pleading eyes of Brother Gu and the rest, she led them into the village. Next, she threw all her gains into the godly soul heaven grind. That night, Brother Gu and the others stayed outside Kata. Hearing the roars of the beasts in the night, they were terrified and regretful. On the second day, Zichen still did not come out. He also did not say anything to these people. Brother Ge's heart was dead, but he did not want to die, so he could only stay here. 3 days had passed. They had also stayed outside for 3 days. During this time, There were not many faded soul fruits left. The anger of the villagers gradually softened and turned into pity. But even if they could not bear it, they would definitely not allow these people to join Kata again. As for the others who came to exchange for faded soul fruits, they had a mocking look on their faces. Obviously, they reaped what they sowed. On the fourth day, Noah, who had not come to exchange for faded soul fruits, finally came. They brought close to 100 soul-devouring beasts with them. The team was mighty. As they moved forward, the soul hunters released a powerful aura. Obviously, they wanted to show off. After seeing Brother Gu and the rest, Nelson, who was leading the team, spat at them in disdain. Sean Eyre stood outside the village, blocking Noah's people. He said indifferently, "The leader has ordered that the godly soul heaven grind will not be used on Noah." Nelson stared at Sean Eyre and said, "Are you crazy? You said there would be an extra 10% reward, not a ban on exchange." Sean Eyre smiled coldly and said, "You know whether I'm crazy or not?" After saying that, he turned and left. During this time, Sean Eyre could not help but sigh. The leader is really kind. Nelson looked at Sean Eyre leaving and was so angry that his face turned green. But with Zichun, the strongest person, he naturally did not dare to force the exchange. So, he left with his people. But when he left, he took Brother Gu and the rest with him. Clearly, they were not stupid. They understood Zichun's intention. Chapter 3681. Looking at the young man again, Noah became excited. The young man was his only hope. As long as he was willing to help him, he would be able to defeat Zichun and take back the God Soul Heaven grind. However, after seeing the young man's cold eyes, Noah's eagerness decreased a lot. Given the young man's vast magical powers, he naturally knew what had happened. He had already lost to Zichun, but the young man was still willing to help him. The young man said, "Although you lost this time, it's also an opportunity for you." Noah, who had been waiting for the young man to get angry, did not expect the young man to say such a thing. He became excited again. Comprehend and refine well. Once you break through, kill Zichun in the name of a challenge. The young man stretched out his finger and pointed at Noah's forehead. A beam of soul light went straight into Noah's forehead. After perceiving the content of the light entering his mind, Noah became even more excited. "You're on your own." The young man's figure disappeared. Noah walked out of the room and was so excited that he wanted to do a few somersaults. This time, he was really going to work. The God Soul Heaven grind was gone, and Nelson had brought people to exchange for the life soul fruit. Noah was furious at the thought of being deliberately targeted by Zichun. For the past few decades, the one who had played this role had always been Noah. He could target whoever he wanted and suppress any force he wanted, and that force would never be able to recover from the setback. Now, Noah was the one being targeted, and he was the only force that was targeted. "Zichun, just you wait. When I break through, it'll be the time of your death. The God Soul Heaven grind will always be mine." Noah had secretly made up his mind to kill Zichun. At this moment, a voice came from outside the tribe, and then Nelson and the others returned. Looking at the prey they were carrying again, Noah frowned and asked, "What's going on?" Nelson came forward and said angrily, "That damned Zichun. How dare he forbid us from exchanging?" "Why? Didn't we agree that it would only be 10%? Does he want to go back on his word after just getting the God Soul Heaven grind?" Noah's eyes became extremely cold. "That's not it." Nelson shook his head and said, "I suspect it has something to do with those people." As Nelson turned his head, he saw Brother Gu and the others. They stood in the distance, silent as cicadas in winter. At this moment, they were filled with regret. If they had known this would happen, they would not have come to Noah even if they were beaten to death. Noah's gaze swept across second Brother Gu and the others. "You did the right thing. Let these trash stay. Tomorrow, you can continue to bring people to exchange. If Zichun still forbids us from exchanging, then these trash." Noah swiped his hand across his neck. "Leave none alive." With that, he turned around and entered his room to begin cultivating. Nelson turned around and sneered at Old Man Gu and the others. "You all better pray. If we can't make the deal tomorrow, then I'll throw your heads in front of Kata's door." Second brother Gu and the others were so scared that their bodies were trembling. The others were also terrified. Everyone was praying in their hearts. Kata village, the future Kata tribe. Zichun walked out of his room. This room was closest to the god's soul heaven grind, so he could receive the soul power baptism at any time. Because the exchange was free these few days, Kata was particularly lively. Because there were too many people exchanging, and Kata's people were few, Iza and Gedon also came to help. Along the way, many people bowed to Zichun respectfully. Zichun left Kata and went straight into the hunting forest. Yugue was lying on Zichun's shoulder. This hunting trip was naturally to strengthen Yugue. As for Kata, it was already on the right track and did not need any extra help. Not long after entering the forest, Zichun encountered a soul-eating beast. Yugue was the most excited. Without hesitation, it pounced forward and devoured the soul-eating beast. After devouring a soul-eating beast, Yugue landed on Zichun's shoulder again. The soul power around it was surging, and its aura became very unstable. Zichun did not drive Yugue away. Yugue had the ability to devour a soul-eating beast during this period of refining. Zichun continued forward. He would personally deal with the soul-eating beasts he encountered along the way, and then put them into the Kata world. As he went deeper, the number of soul-eating beasts Zichun encountered increased. It was far more than before. He frowned slightly. There should not be so many soul-eating beasts in this place. After going a few miles deeper, Zichun heard the sounds of battle. This area was Kata's hunting area. It should be Shanya and the others. Zichun walked forward, but the more he walked, the more he felt that something was wrong. The battle seemed to be exceptionally intense. Zichun increased his speed and rushed forward. After arriving at the battlefield, he finally found the problem. There were close to 100 soul-eating beasts surrounding Shanya and the others. Among these soul-eating beasts, there were obviously some that were larger than before. At this moment, Shanya was leading the team to attack again and again, trying to open a gap. However, there would be a large number of soul-eating beasts surrounding them every time. They tried many times to no avail. From what Zichun knew, soul-eating beasts mostly lived alone. It was rare to see them in groups of 3 to 5. It was even rarer to see them like this. Moreover, they seemed to be well trained. Every time they surrounded Shanya and the others, it was just the right time. Zichun raised his head and looked around. These soul-eating beasts were a little unusual. Finally, he found something unusual on a high ground. There was a soul-eating beast overlooking the battlefield. Its eyes were cold, but it did not have the brutality of the other soul-eating beasts. At first glance, Zichun determined that there was something wrong with the other party. Hence, he took the path from afar and slowly approached the other party. The soul-eating beast was slightly smaller in size. Its eyes were overlooking the battlefield. Whoosh! Suddenly, rays of soul light appeared and directly wrapped around the other party's body. During this time, Zichun kept staring at the other party. The soul-eating beast immediately turned its head. In its cold eyes, there was an emotion other than coldness for the first time. The other party did not make a sound, but the nearby soul-eating beasts all turned their heads around. That's it. Zichun had already determined. Hence, he quickly exerted his strength. The soul-binding chains were pulled taut, and the soul-eating beast's body that was bound immediately flew towards Zichun. Pa, pa, pa. Just as its body flew halfway, the other party broke free from Zichun's soul-binding chains. Its body immediately turned in midair and fled into the distance. As for the other soul-eating beasts, they flew towards Zichun. Chapter 3682. After swallowing the leader of the soul-devouring beasts, the other soul-devouring beasts seemed to have gone mad. They were supposed to be pouncing on Zichun, but they immediately changed their direction and charged at Yugue. At this time, Yugue's body was fluctuating between big and small, and his soul power fluctuations were extremely strong. Obviously, after swallowing the other party, he was in a very bad state. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Soul light lingered, and dozens of soul-binding chains appeared in front of Zichun. Like dozens of lightning bolts, they wrapped around the soul-devouring beasts. The soul-binding chains were instantly stretched, and the soul-devouring beasts were sent flying. "Little guy, come back!" Another soul-binding chain flew out and instantly wrapped around the dark ghost's body, then brought it over. Yugue landed on Zichen's shoulder, and the soul-devouring beasts once again pounced on him. A cold light flashed in Zichen's eyes. Instead of retreating, he rushed forward. During this time, his figure constantly changed, dodging the attacks of the soul-devouring beasts one after another. His palm was like the wind, and soul power lingered on the palm print, landing on the heads of the soul-devouring beasts. With a bang, many of the soul-devouring beasts were sent flying. After falling to the ground, they were motionless. The movement here quickly alarmed Shanya and the others. After seeing their leader appear, they were very surprised. After encountering danger, they thought of going back for help, but no matter which direction they broke out in, they would be surrounded again. Now that they saw their leader suddenly appear, they were surprised and incomparably excited. Their gradually weakened bodies seemed to have gained strength out of thin air. Their spirits were lifted, and they attacked again. For a time, the soul-devouring beasts were constantly sent flying. On Zichen's side, the battle was very fierce. The soul-devouring beasts seemed to have gone crazy, madly attacking him. Zichen's figure constantly dodged, but there were still attacks landing on his body. On his black robe, which was obviously made of soul power, cracks appeared, and even his skin had many wounds. But his results were also very amazing. More than 20 soul-devouring beasts had fallen to the ground one after another. Without the previous soul-gnawing beast's secret command, the other soul-gnawing beast's attacks were no longer organized. Very quickly, Shanya and the others charged over and met up with Zichen. A moment later, almost half of the corpses were left behind, while the rest of the soul-devouring beasts ran away. Behind Zichen, Yugue's aura gradually stabilized. "Leader, why are you here?" When the battle was over, Clark asked excitedly. If it wasn't for Zichen's appearance, they would have been in real danger and might even have lost their lives. "I had nothing to do, so I came out for a walk. I happened to see you guys being besieged." "What happened?" Zichen looked at Shanya. The other party shook his head, indicating that he didn't know. They were just hunting normally when they were suddenly ambushed. "Call for help first." Zichen pointed at the soul-gnawing beasts on the ground and said, "Bring these soul-gnawing beasts back." Vern immediately arranged for someone to deal with this matter. Shanya glanced at Zichen and said, "Leader, do you still remember what I told you a few days ago? Did you say that the number of soul-gnawing beasts here suddenly increased?" "Yes. And during this period, the number of soul-gnawing beasts is obviously increasing." Shanya said, "This kind of gathering of more than 100 soul-gnawing beasts has never happened before." Zichen thought of the soul-gnawing beast that was swallowed by Yugue. The other party could control all the soul-gnawing beasts, but where did he come from? He looked into the depths of the dense forest, where no one had ever entered. It was a mysterious place. Could it be that they came from the depths? But why would they appear here? Zichen frowned slightly. Vern led people to deal with these soul-gnawing beasts, while Zichen and Shanya continued to move into the depths. They didn't know if it was because they had killed too many soul-gnawing beasts before, but this time the two walked for a long time without finding any trace of the soul-gnawing beasts. On the same day, the two turned back and made some gains on the way back. On this day, the people of the Noah tribe came again. They also brought along a few soul hunters from Kada, but Brother Gu was not there. This time, their arrival was not stopped. Obviously, Nelson really understood Zichen's meaning yesterday. Zichen respected the choice of Brother Gu and the others, so he would not blame them for leaving, but he would never accept them again. Therefore, it was best for them to continue to stay in the Noah tribe. During the exchange process, the soul hunters from Kada were very nervous, because as long as someone came out to stop them, they would lose their heads. Fortunately, the exchange went smoothly. When Zichen came back, the people of the Noah tribe had already left. At night, Zichen continued to cultivate. Yugue was resting on the bed. Ever since he came back, he had not moved at all, as if he had fallen into a deep sleep. On the second day, Zichen went out with the team to hunt soul-gnawing beasts. No one would complain about having too many life soul fruits, and as Zichen's realm increased, The number of life soul fruits he consumed every night also increased. On this day, they did not encounter the same encirclement as yesterday, but their harvest was not small. The number of soul-gnawing beasts here was beyond imagination. In the blink of an eye, 7 days passed. The free exchange for the other villages had ended, and on a new day, a portion of the rewards would be deducted for the soul-gnawing beasts they brought. Of course, Ija and Gedon did not need to provide any rewards. In these 7 days, because Zichen had also joined the hunt, Kata's harvest was not small. Therefore, other than the fact that Kata was still lacking in population, it had the shadow of a tribe in every other aspect. Time passed, and 7 days passed. For a full half a month, Noah had been cultivating. The soul power that surged around his body became more and more tyrannical, and finally reached a limit at a certain moment. Buzz. His soul shook, and Noah broke through from level 7 to level 8. His face was filled with excitement. Zichun, I've finally broken through. Next, it's your turn to die. Whoosh. Light flashed, and the young man's body appeared out of thin air. Sir, I've broken through. I'll kill Zichun soon, Noah said excitedly. The young man's expression softened a little, and he said, not soon, but soon. To avoid any more trouble, go and kill Zichun now. Noah nodded, and naturally had no objections. He did not want his divine soul to stay in Kata for one more day. This was naturally a big move, and he was ready to gather everyone. The young man waved his sleeves, and his body disappeared. Noah laughed, and his laughter spread far and wide. However, at this moment, the young man's body reappeared, and this gave Noah a fright, and his laughter stopped abruptly. The young man clearly didn't care about this. His face, which had always been cold, had a hint of panic on it at this moment. Chapter 3683. What the hell is going on? Shanya stared at the scene in front of him in shock. The others had worried looks on their faces. They didn't know how Katari and the others were doing. Zichen frowned. The scene in front of him was completely out of his expectations. The soul-devouring beasts had begun to attack the village. This was simply inconceivable. At this moment, due to the existence of the light barrier, the soul-devouring beasts were circling around Kata, waiting for an opportunity to launch an attack. Zichun gazed into the distance. Under such circumstances, there must be a leader of the soul-devouring beasts secretly commanding them. As long as the leader was eliminated, the soul-devouring beasts would naturally disperse. The underworld ghost had once devoured one. Then, could it possibly find a second one? Zichun began to form a seal. As the seal fell, the underworld ghost in Kata instantly disappeared. In the next moment, it appeared beside Zichun. The little guy was very agile. Its body was surging with a tyrannical aura. During this period, it had grown quite a bit. Little guy, look around. Are there any special soul-devouring beasts? Zichun looked at the underworld ghost and said. The underworld ghost stared ahead. Its bright black eyes were constantly moving, as if it was looking for a target. Suddenly, its eyes lit up as it stared at a certain direction. Obviously, it had found its target. Zichun also looked in that direction. But before he could discover anything, the soul-devouring beasts behind them suddenly began to retreat. They had retreated. Shanya and the others immediately rushed towards Kata. Zichen hesitated for a moment before he also walked towards Kata. He did not pursue. When he arrived outside Kata, the light released by the divine soul heaven grindstone had already dissipated. Shan Er and the others stood at the entrance of the village, looking very excited. At this moment, Zichun came before the divine soul heaven grindstone and carefully examined it. The others were still in a state of shock. Half an hour later, Ija and the others arrived at Kata. This was because there was not a single person left in the village. Moreover, the entire village had been destroyed beyond recognition. What's going on? Iza came to Zichen's side and asked in confusion. Zichen shook his head. Ija and the others who grew up here didn't know. So how could he, an outsider, know? Will they still come? Iza asked again. I don't know. Zichen shook his head again. Iza hesitated and said, I want to stay here for the time being. Is that okay? Zichen turned to look at Iza. Ija said embarrassedly, If those soul-devouring beasts come again, our Ija will definitely be annihilated. He had already heard from his subordinates about what had happened before. At the critical moment, the divine soul heaven grind burst out and protected Kata village, saving everyone. Ija clearly wanted to stay here and take refuge. Zicheng guessed Ija's intentions, but he didn't immediately respond. He immediately separated a strand of soul power and poured it into the divine soul heaven grind. From what he knew, the divine soul heaven grind was only used to exchange for the life soul fruit. From the changes before, it was clear that the divine soul heaven grind had other uses. After his soul entered the divine soul heaven grind, the divine soul heaven grind had an obvious change. Strands of soul power vibrated out, and Zichen's sea of consciousness had an additional message: divine soul protection. This should be the protective light from before. Zichen was very surprised. Zichen moved his spiritual thoughts and saw a ray of light fly out from the divine soul heaven grind. It extended out in all directions just like the light barrier before. But now, with Zichen's control, the range of its expansion became even larger, far exceeding the range before. After having a general understanding of the range of the protection, Zichen looked back at Ize, who had been silently waiting for a reply, and said, "By the way, inform Gatton that if he's willing, he can also bring everyone here." Ize quickly nodded, appearing very excited. Seeing him leave, Zichen said, "This matter might not be resolved in a short period of time. You can build some temporary houses nearby." Ize left. In less than an hour, he brought some things that were commonly used. Gatton's people also came, and reality proved that everything was as Zichen guessed. In the next 2 days, soul-devouring beasts would occasionally come and try to attack Kata. With Zichen personally overseeing the situation, he led Kata, Gatton, and Iz's soul hunters to repel the soul-devouring beasts time and time again. The harvest was bountiful. Compared to Kata, the other villages suffered heavy losses. Some of the leaders who couldn't see any hope left their villages and came to Kata to seek protection. Zichen didn't stop them and accepted everyone. Therefore, outside of the small Kata village, many temporary buildings appeared. Many people from different villages stayed here. They were only here temporarily and didn't really join Kata. Time passed day by day. Every day, there would be people from other villages coming here to seek protection. After 3 days, even the people from Dalt village came. Dalt used to be the owner of the God's Grindstone. It used to be a big tribe. They had many people, even though many of them died during this period. With their addition, the range of protection of the God's Grindstone was obviously not enough. Thus, everyone could only squeeze together again. According to the news that Zichen heard, the entire area was ambushed by soul-devouring beasts. That meant that others would eventually come to this place. When that time came, the range of protection of the God's Grindstone would obviously not be enough. When that time came, who should he give up on? Before Zichen could seriously consider this question, more villages came. They were very far away from Kata and suffered heavy losses. After the population couldn't be maintained, there were only 2 places that didn't have people. One was Yate, which Zichen had looted, and the other was Noah. In these few days, the people from these 2 villages didn't even come to exchange for the life spirit fruit. Could it be that they were destroyed? Someone had such a guess. It was said that the number of soul-devouring beasts gathered at Noah was the highest. On a new day, Zichen led all the soul hunters out of the protective light barrier and prepared to hunt soul-devouring beasts. In these few days, Kata had already started to exchange for the life spirit fruit for free. It even gave out life spirit fruits to those who obviously didn't have the ability to fight. All of the soul hunters followed Zichen, and this allowed the team to form a hunting team that could participate in group battles. At this moment, figures suddenly appeared in front of them. There were many of them, more than 1,000 of them. After seeing these people, Zichen stopped and narrowed his eyes as he looked ahead. He saw Noah, who hadn't appeared for a long time. His people led hundreds of soul-devouring beasts and walked towards Kata like a black dragon. Chapter 3684. Noah's voice was loud enough for many people to hear. In an instant, everyone's expressions changed. "I want to challenge you. Reset heaven's grindstone." Noah shouted again, appearing very confident. The group behind him was like a long dragon. Zichen looked at him and did not respond. Why? Are you afraid to accept the challenge? Seeing that Zichen did not respond, Noah looked even more pleased. Looks like you already know the use of the grindstone. Then all the more I can't let you get it. Noah noticed the protective light shield in front of him and could not help but smile coldly. Seeing Noah approaching, Zichen said, At first, I was worried that the grindstone's protective position was not enough. Since you're here, then let your people stand guard outside. When the soul-devouring beasts attack, I'll have to trouble you to block them. Zichen, is there something wrong with your head? I want to challenge you and take back the spirit grindstone. Why are you telling me to block the soul-devouring beasts? Noah looked at Zichen as if he was looking at an idiot. Challenge me? Zichen's lips curled into a smile as he asked, What? Have you broken through to the 8th level? Cut the crap. Today is the day you die. Noah's voice was cold, and killing intent flashed in his eyes. However, in the next moment, his cold expression froze. His eyes widened as he looked at Zichen in disbelief. He cried out, Level 7? How is this possible? How long has it been since you broke through? Why did you break through again? He saw with his own eyes that Zichen had broken through to level 6 and defeated him, a level 7. Now that he had advanced to level 8, he was confident that he could kill his opponent. However, who would have thought that Zichen would break through again and reach level 7? In the past, it took him several years to go from level 6 to level 7. However, how long did Zichen take? Behind Noah, the people who were originally full of confidence all had long faces and lost their confidence once again. Zichen could defeat Noah when he was level 6. Now that Zichen was level 7, it seemed that he would have no problem defeating Noah, who was level 8. How could this be? Looking at Zichen, who was releasing his soul power aura, Noah was completely dumbfounded. He couldn't believe what was happening. Amidst the crowd, the young man who had followed them silently had a look of astonishment on his face. He actually broke through, but I couldn't sense it at all. It seems that the rules are interfering and suppressing me. He stood in the crowd and said nothing. Actually, in his heart, he really hoped that Noah would challenge Zichen again. A level 8 against a level 7 might have a chance of winning. Even if he failed, it had nothing to do with him. Do you still want to challenge me? If you don't want to challenge it, you can stay outside the Divine Soul Light Shield from now on. You're late. The seats inside are already full. Zichen looked at Noah and said, You guys are here to escape. You won't reject this proposal, right? Behind Zichen, there were many soul hunters. Among these soul hunters, there were naturally many leaders, and Iza was one of the most inconspicuous ones. Looking at the situation in front of him, several thoughts appeared in Iza's mind. Then, as if he had made up his mind, he said in a deep voice, I, Iza, am willing to disband Iza village and join Chief Zichen's tribe. I wonder if Chief is willing to accept us? As soon as these words were spoken, it caused quite an uproar. Everyone knew that in this place, all the leaders could obtain additional benefits. This was also the reason why after they came here, even if they had to live under someone else's roof, they still maintained the existence of the village. As long as the village existed, they could obtain benefits. But once the village was disbanded, they wouldn't be able to obtain any additional benefits. Therefore, all the leaders were shocked by Iza's decisive choice. However, at this moment, in Zichen's sea of consciousness, a choice appeared. That was whether to allow Iza to join or not. Zichen didn't hesitate too much and nodded. Yes. A mysterious power descended from the sky. From then on, Iza became history. Everyone who used to be part of Iza became part of Kata. At this moment, the divine spirit heaven grindstone in Kata released light again. The light shield that had reached its limit expanded a little more. This scene was very surprising. And Zichen, the leader of Kata, understood another use of the divine spirit heaven grindstone at this moment. As the population increased, the protective light of the divine spirit heaven grindstone would become stronger. I, Jelton, am also willing to join Ka. At this moment, Jelton also made his choice. He was obviously not stupid. At this moment, whether or not everyone could survive was still a problem. How could he have the time to care about the additional rewards of the leader? Sure enough, after Zichen agreed, the protective light of the divine spirit heaven grindstone expanded again. The others also understood. One after another, 2 more villages chose to disband and join Kata. The protective light shield expanded continuously. It was almost able to accommodate the thousands of people that Noah brought with him. At this moment, the surroundings quieted down. No one was willing to join Kata. Clearly, many of the leaders were unwilling to give up the reward, even at this moment. Zichun did not force them. Instead, he looked at Noah and said, "You guys find a place yourselves. We still have to hunt." Everyone followed Zichun. During this time, Iza, Geltun, and the others had already joined Kata. Their backs were especially straight, and they walked with their heads held high. At this moment, all the survivors in this area had gathered in Kata. At this moment, all the soul-devouring beasts started to move towards Kata. If one were to stand in the sky, they would be able to see that the soul-devouring beasts had already formed a circle and were surrounding Kata. Noah had brought a lot of people. These people were not enough to enter the protective light. Once the soul-devouring beasts attacked again, they would naturally be in the most danger. But no one was willing to change this situation, even if they knew the way. After returning that day, Shan Er asked Zichun how to exchange for the life soul fruit for Noah. Zichun told him clearly that the exchange was free and there was no reward. In his heart, he had a feeling that something extremely dangerous was about to happen. At this moment, everyone had to be united. When Noah heard the news, he was very surprised. In his estimation, half of the hundreds of soul-devouring beasts that he brought with him would be deducted. Who knew that Zichun would not even ask for a reward? It's just a small trick to buy people's hearts. In the temporary encampment, the young man snorted and said, "He wants you to join his tribe." Noah did not say anything. It was impossible. If he was willing to join someone else's village, he would not have left Kata. On the second day, a large number of soul-devouring beasts appeared outside Kata and attacked it. Noah's people had to resist with all their might. When Zichun heard the news, he immediately rushed out. When he saw the soul-devouring beasts that were attacking, his expression changed. Chapter 3685. The number of soul-devouring beasts was beyond imagination. Noah and Yates' people were the first to bear the brunt of the attack and fought against the soul-devouring beasts. All soul hunters attack. Everyone else retreat. Noah shouted as he charged forward. Those who didn't have the ability to fight retreated back into the range of the light shield. Further back were the people from the other villages. They looked at the scene in front of them in a daze. There were simply too many soul-devouring beasts. So many that they didn't dare to go forward. "Everyone, charge with me and kill the soul-devouring beasts." Zichun shouted and charged forward. Shanya and the others followed closely behind Zichun and charged out of the protective light barrier. The people from the other villages were hesitant and didn't follow immediately. At this moment, Noah and Yates' people were like a flood. They were divided into 2 groups, one large and one small. The large group retreated, and they were all ordinary people with no fighting power. The small group charged forward to resist the soul-devouring beast's attacks. As for Zichun's people, they were like small waves in the flood. They weren't very eye-catching. After all, there were too few of them. What's wrong with these people? Ija noticed the scene behind him and couldn't help but show dissatisfaction. Obviously, most people didn't move. Zichun said, "Let's block this attack first." Shanya, who was beside him, noticed that Zichun's expression had turned cold. "Kill." In another direction, Dalt's people moved. Although they were already a village, Dalt was still a huge force. They were even bigger than Yate. After Dalter made his move, the others also started to charge one after another. Zichun had already charged out of the light barrier and fought fiercely with the soul-devouring beasts. During this time, Zichun said to Yu Gu-a, who was lying on his shoulder, "Little guy, quickly sense the position of the leader of the soul-devouring beasts. We'll deal with it first." As he spoke, Zichun's powerful soul power vibrated. The soul-devouring beasts that tried to charge at him were all sent flying. Next to him, a vacuum appeared. Shanya and the others immediately followed up and attacked the surrounding soul-gnawing beasts. One by one, the soul-gnawing beasts fell to the ground. While the battle at the front continued, another person appeared behind the soul-devouring beasts. Beside him were more than a dozen soul-devouring beasts. They stood beside this person as if they were his guards. As expected, the heaven's wrath has appeared here. This human wore a black robe, and as he looked at the battlefield, a faint smile appeared on his face. Go, bring him back to me. Beside him, several soul-devouring beasts immediately rushed out and joined the battle. If other people saw this scene, they would definitely be very shocked because there was actually a human who could command the soul-devouring beast. This was simply inconceivable. The black-robed human silently watched the battle in front of him. Heaven's wrath, you broke the rules first, so don't blame us for being impolite. Under his watch, the soul-devouring beast continued to charge in a certain direction. On the battlefield, Zichen gradually sensed that something was wrong because most of the soul-devouring beasts were charging in Noah's direction. During this time, Yugue's gaze had locked onto Noah's direction several times, but he quickly moved away. Where is the leader? Just as Zichen was puzzled, Yugue's gaze locked onto a target, which was right in front of him. Let's go. Zichen tapped his foot and quickly rushed forward. The soul power around his body constantly vibrated, sending the soul-devouring beasts that approached him flying. During this time, Zichen noticed a soul-devouring beast. The other party's size was not large, and it was hiding among the attacking soul-devouring beasts. Zichen, who was telepathically connected with Yugue, immediately tapped his foot and flew forward after confirming the target. Separated by dozens of soul-devouring beasts, Zichen met the leader's eyes. In the other party's eyes, he saw coldness and brutality. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Dozens of soul-devouring beasts immediately leaped into the air and pounced towards Zichen, who was temporarily in the air. At this moment, dozens of soul-binding chains appeared behind Zichen and directly wrapped around the soul-devouring beasts. These soul-binding chains did not come from Zichen, but from Shanya, who was also a Realm 7. As her soul power continued to increase, she naturally had more tricks up her sleeves. Controlling multiple soul-binding chains was the most basic, but the current effect was also the best. Those soul-devouring beasts were immediately stopped. Zichen swept through the air, and when his figure landed, it was as if a storm had appeared around him. The soul-devouring beasts around him were immediately sent flying. In front of Zichen, 3 feet away, was the leader of the soul-devouring beasts. Whoosh! Yugue, who had been impatient for a long time, teleported to the leader's side and swallowed it in one gulp. The leader of the soul-devouring beasts did not even have time to react. Then, Yugue returned to Zichen's side. It needed a period of time to refine it. Yugue succeeded, but Zichen was in trouble because the soul-devouring beasts around him had their eyes on him at this moment. In the blink of an eye, he was heavily surrounded by the soul-devouring beasts. Only the soul-devouring beasts could be seen. Zichen's figure was nowhere to be seen. In the distance, when the black-robed man saw this scene, a look of disdain flashed across his eyes. Your eyesight is not bad, but it's a pity that you're too stupid. You're practically asking for death. Suddenly, his expression changed slightly. He saw Shanya charge forward quickly, the soul power around her body constantly surging. She killed her way to Zichen's side, and wherever she passed, the eyes of the soul-devouring beasts turned red one by one, as if they had fallen into madness. This is... The black-robed man, who was originally indifferent, immediately changed his expression after seeing this scene. There was even a look of shock in his eyes. Heavenly blessing. This is heavenly blessing. Heavenly blessing that is rarely seen in thousands of years. No wonder, no wonder. The black-robed man laughed loudly. He did not make any other movements, but he immediately turned his head and walked into the distance. And as he left, the soul-devouring beasts that were madly attacking one by one gave up the battle and began to retreat. The next time I come, it will be the time for you all to disappear. No matter if it's heavenly blasphemer or heavenly blessing, I want it all. The black-robed man walked away. Shanya rushed to Zichen's side, looking very worried. At this moment, a loud tremor was heard. The soul-devouring beasts that surrounded Zichen were all sent flying, and Zichen's figure appeared. Landing on the ground, the soul-devouring beasts did not attack again. Instead, they all retreated. Shanya came to Zichen's side and looked at Zichen nervously. "I'm fine." Zichen shook his head and looked at Yugue, who was lying on his shoulder. Yugue had already fallen into a deep sleep. The soul-devouring beasts began to retreat. Zichen looked back at the crowd that participated in the battle. Looking at the many corpses on the ground, his expression gradually turned cold. It seems that there's a need to unify the rules. However, before Zichen could make a move, cries of agony sounded from behind. It was Noah. Chapter 3686. Boom, 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 boom. Soul hunters were sent flying one after another. "Noah, what are you doing?" One of them shouted loudly. It was a village chief. This time, Noah had directly injured 3 soul hunters of his village, greatly weakening the battle prowess of his village. Noah didn't say anything and continued to attack. "You're attacking your own people here. Aren't you afraid that Chief Zichen will chase all of Noah's people out?" The chief questioned coldly. Noah's response was a sneer. He continued to attack with full strength, accompanied by the sound of bones breaking. "Noah, you're too arrogant. Do you still have Chief Zichen in your eyes?" The chief, who didn't dare to step forward, shouted, "You dare to question Chief Zichen's authority?" The others watched coldly from the sidelines and didn't interfere. "Chief Zichen, help. Noah has gone crazy and is attacking his own people." Seeing Noah ignoring him, the chief could only shout for help. Zichen heard the commotion and was about to go over to take a look. At this moment, Dalter came to Zichen's side. The old man smiled at Zichen and said, "Chief, I want to talk to you about our Dalter joining Kata." Zichen glanced into the distance. Someone happened to block his line of sight, so he couldn't see what was happening. Zichen glanced at Dalter and nodded. "All right." After saying that, Zichen took the initiative to turn around. Dalter smiled. Chief Zichen understood his meaning. Then, the two of them walked forward to discuss Dalter's joining. In fact, there wasn't much to discuss, because it was just a matter of a sentence. Dalter disbanded and directly announced that he was joining Kata. At the back, the chief's cry for help also disappeared. After Noah had knocked the leader to the ground, his icy gaze swept across the surrounding crowd as he said indifferently, "From today onwards, all of you will scram outside and fight against the soul-devouring beast. Let our people stay inside." When the others heard this, their faces changed and they were all terrified. Letting their people go outside was simply sending them to their deaths. "Why? We were here first." A leader immediately questioned. With this, Noah clenched his fist and said, "If you're not convinced, then come at me. We want to find Chief Zichen. We need to seek justice," another leader said loudly. Noah's face was full of disdain as he said, "If you have the ability, then go and find him. Let's see if Zichen cares about you idiots or our powerful Noah." In the crowd, someone immediately reacted and said loudly, "I want to join Kata." Hearing this, the others finally came to their senses. "We are willing to join Ka." The corpses on the ground were a ghastly sight. There were soul hunters as well as some ordinary people who could have survived. Noah was beating people up, but Chief Zichen did not appear for a long time. Some people had already seen the signs. They were only here to seek refuge, and Zichen had no obligation to help everyone. For example, in the face of the soul-gnawing beast crisis, what Zichen really needed was someone like Noah and his enormous power. Therefore, the leaders who came to their senses made their choice. At this moment, Zichen and Dalt had finished their discussion. "I, Dalt, am disbanded today. I will officially join Kata." As Dalt's voice fell, the Divine Soul Heaven Grindstone released light again. The Divine Soul Defense expanded again and enveloped everyone. The soul-gnawing beast that was lying motionless on the ground flew up at this moment and flew towards the Divine Soul Heaven Grindstone and Kata. They were all devoured by the Divine Soul Heaven Grindstone and turned into life spirit fruits. This stunned many leaders. One had to know that many of the life spirit fruits were their spoils of war. Now that they were all devoured by the divine soul heaven grindstone, how were they going to distribute them? Zichen walked to the front and said, "Let's deal with the corpses of our companions first. All leaders, follow me. We need to discuss the future." Zichun walked towards Kata. Along the way, he saw the corpses of the ordinary people. His eyes were filled with pain. Although these people weren't from Kata and were even forces that were hostile to him in the past, these ordinary people were innocent. Zichun returned to Kata. The other leaders followed him, including Noah and Yate. Noah looked at the divine soul heaven grindstone in the center of Kata and felt very melancholy. Perhaps he would never be able to get it back. Zichen's growth was too fast. Zichen's room was very big, but it still couldn't accommodate so many leaders. Therefore, he came to an empty space. The other leaders stood beside Zichen. Ija, Gedon, and Dalt didn't come. Strictly speaking, they were no longer leaders. Zichen looked at everyone and said, "What do you all think about the current situation?" The leaders fell silent. What happened today had really frightened them. The number of soul-gnawing beasts was too much. Looking at the silent crowd, Zichen said again, or rather, "When do you all think this crisis will end?" The leaders remained silent. No one knew. Noah, who was at the side, said, "Perhaps it's when we all die." The expressions of all the leaders changed. Zichen nodded and said, "That's very possible." He looked at everyone and said, "So, at this time, what do you think is the meaning of personal gains and losses compared to life and death?" The others remained silent. Noah said impatiently, "What do you mean? Hurry up and say it. What's the point of beating around the bush?" Zichen didn't get angry. The first two people to notice the situation were actually Noah and Dalt, the two former strongest people. He said, "What I mean is very simple. Before the crisis is over, I want you all to disband and join Kata. I will be the only one in charge." The leader who had been silent all this time had a change in his expression, but he didn't say anything. Zichen continued, "I can promise you all that once the crisis is over, you can leave at any time. I won't stop you. But as long as the crisis is not over, all of you have to listen to me. Of course, if you don't want to, I will respect your opinion. From now on, immediately take your people and leave my protection area. You can rely on yourselves. I can still let you exchange for life soul fruits for free, but you are not allowed to enter my protection area." Zichun gave everyone a choice, but there was almost no suspense. Everyone chose to disband, including Noah and Yate. This was because no one had the ability to survive outside. At this point, the entire area was unified. Chapter 3687. All the villages had disappeared, and Kata had been unified. No one knew when the crisis of the soul-devouring beasts would disappear, so everyone began to build a real base. Kata began its first expansion. Yugue had been following beside Zichun, but he seemed to be a little irritable these days. Zichun was wholeheartedly cultivating, trying to raise his cultivation level before the next attack of the soul-devouring beasts. 2 days later, the soul-devouring beasts came again, and there were more of them this time. When the citizens of Kata saw this, they were shocked. They were only shocked, but not worried. This was because the range of the divine soul heaven grindstone was large enough to protect everyone. Zichun came to the edge of the light shield. He looked at the black mass of soul-devouring beasts and frowned slightly. His eyes were like cold lightning, sweeping forward as if he was searching for something. Behind him, all the soul hunters began to gather. Whether they were willing to obey Zichen or not, at this juncture, they could only listen to Zichen's arrangements. All the soul-devouring beasts gathered and stood behind Zichen. Zichen turned to look at the crowd and said, "Noah, Clark, Vern, Shania, the 4 of you follow me and cover me. As for the rest, follow behind us in groups of 50 and guard the free passage. Make sure that the injured can be sent back as soon as possible." Behind Zichun, the group of soul hunters responded in unison. The soul-devouring beasts at the front came to the protective light shield, and their huge bodies slammed into it. With a loud bang, the light shield began to tremble, but the soul-devouring beasts' bodies also emitted bursts of green smoke. The soul-devouring beasts screamed and retreated, but there were more soul-devouring beasts behind them, and the sound of banging could be heard through the light shield. Kill! Looking at the countless soul-devouring beasts in front of him, Zichen shouted and took the lead to kill. Powerful soul power surged around him, and all the soul-devouring beasts near him were blown away. Yu Gue lay on Zichen's shoulder, ignoring the soul-devouring beasts. His target was the leader. He kept looking around, searching for the other party. When Zichen walked out, a vacuum space appeared beside him, so Noah and the others followed. During this time, the vacuum space continued to expand, allowing the team behind to catch up. When the young man mixed in the crowd saw this scene, he coldly smiled and said, "You're not stupid. You know how to act cautiously." However, when his gaze swept past Yu Gue, there was a trace of doubt in his eyes. Clearly, even he could not tell what that black fellow was. However, the other party was actually able to devour the soul-devouring beasts, and even find the soul-devouring beasts that had gained intelligence. This was an incredible perception. At this time, Ghost Spectre had already locked onto a direction. You discovered it so quickly. Your senses are indeed sharp. The youth who hadn't made a move yet stood within the light barrier, coldly watching this scene. Zichen's body immediately soared into the air and flew forward. The level 8 Noah followed closely behind, his body surging with a tyrannical aura. He was like a giant beast, rampaging forward. Wherever he passed, the soul-devouring beasts were instantly sent flying. After Noah cleared out an area, Zichen landed on the ground. Accompanied by a loud tremor, he once again borrowed the force and temporarily soared into the air. At this time, Zichen, who was in midair, had already seen the soul-devouring beast leader. The two sides looked at each other, and the other party quickly retreated, obviously sensing danger. At this time, Yu Gue, who had been staying on Zichen's shoulder, quickly rushed forward. Its speed was extremely fast, comparable to teleportation, and almost instantly, it was beside the leader. However, this time, it did not devour it directly. Instead, it slapped its paw, and its small claws landed on the soul-devouring beast leader's head. There was a loud bang. The leader's body was sent flying. Just as its body was in the air, the soul-binding chains wrapped around the soul-devouring beast leader's body like lightning. In the next moment, the soul-binding chains were taut, and Zichen borrowed the force to descend. The moment he came into contact with the leader, he struck out with his palm. Soul shock. Buzz. The powerful soul power shook, and the soul-devouring beast leader lost consciousness. Zichen's body landed on the ground, and there was a loud bang beside him. The soul-devouring beast leader also fell to the side. "Bring it back," Zichen said in a deep voice. The soul power around his body continued to vibrate, sending the soul-devouring beasts nearby flying. At this time, Yu Gue once again landed on Zichen's shoulder and continued to search for its target. The two of them were telepathic, and Zichen knew that there were other soul-devouring beast leaders here. Noah stepped forward, grabbed this soul-devouring beast that looked obviously different, and threw it to the back. The people who had already followed up immediately brought this soul-devouring beast to the back. Immediately after, Yu Gue found a second soul-devouring beast leader, so he signaled the team to start moving with him. After a while, Zichen approached the target again. With Yu Gue's cooperation, he successfully dealt with the second soul-devouring beast. This time, Yu Gue still did not devour it. The young man was still standing behind the light barrier. He was watching everything closely. After seeing Zichen find the targets one after another and successfully kill them each time, a trace of disdain appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Idiot, do you think the intelligent soul-devouring beasts of the soul-devouring clan are so easy to kill? They are baiting you, aren't they?" He muttered in a low voice, but no one beside him heard him. At this time, Zichen's team was getting further and further away. He had already killed 4 soul-devouring beast leaders, and now Yu Gue had found a 5th. This made Zichen very surprised. He did not expect that there would be so many soul-devouring beast leaders this time. "Kill!" Zichen roared and rushed forward again. During this time, he continuously attacked and sent one soul-devouring beast after another flying. Yu Gue's eyes were extremely cold. It was obvious that he was ready to attack. At this time, The soul-devouring beast leader actually took the initiative to attack Zichun. Facing this tyrannical soul power aura, Zichun instantly struck out with his palm, hitting the soul-devouring beast's forehead. Buzz. The fifth soul-devouring beast leader lost consciousness. At this moment, the underworld ghost beside him suddenly let out a sharp cry and quickly arrived in front of Zichun. From Yugue's voice, Zichun heard nervousness and panic, as well as a deep sense of fear. He was slightly stunned and did not sense the danger. At this time, a person suddenly appeared in front of Zichun. The other party was wearing a black robe. He struck Yugue with his palm. Boom. Yugue's body instantly exploded. The other party's palm did not decrease in power. It sounded again and imprinted on Zichun's chest. Pong. Soul power surged in Zichun's chest, and a powerful force instantly poured into his body. Zichun flew backward, a line of blood streaking across the air. Don't leave a single one alive. Chapter 3688. Seeing that Zichun was sent flying, everyone was shocked. Omega Gene? C? N? A? D? E? Zichun was their spiritual pillar. Once something happened to him, the entire kata would be finished. Leader! Shanya screamed and rushed forward. Before Zichun could land on the ground, she hugged Zichun. Zichun's breath was very weak. Boom! A powerful aura surged. Vern and Clark also came forward and sent the surrounding soul-eating beasts flying. Retreat. Noah also came at this time. It was very rare. He was at Realm 8, but he was running in the soul-eating beasts as if there was no one around. At this moment, the other soul-eating beasts around him rushed toward him like crazy. S3. Noah's face was very gloomy. He obviously did not expect such a thing to happen. Suddenly, a person ran out from the soul-eating beasts. Moreover, he could command the soul-eating beasts and even hurt Zichun with one palm. Go! Noah shouted again. The actions of the people behind him were too slow. In fact, it was not that the people were slow, but the pressure on Noah was too great. Countless soul-eating beasts attacked him like crazy. Even he, who was at Realm 8, felt a lot of pressure at this moment. There was a light in front of Noah, forming a huge protective light shield, protecting Shanya and the others behind him. The light shield was absorbing the attack power from the front. The light shield was getting darker and darker. When it reached a limit, Noah gritted his teeth and controlled the light shield to form a rebound force. There was a loud bang. Dozens of soul-eating beasts in front were sent flying, and the other soul-eating beasts around them were sent flying as well. Shanya and the others protected Zichun and kept retreating. At this time, Zichun's breath was very weak. Obviously, he was severely injured. Meanwhile, the troops in the distance were also advancing in this direction. They had always maintained a complete passage. As long as Shania could meet up with them, Zichun would be sent to Kata immediately. The defensive light shield formed a rebound force. Noah shouted again and set up a second light shield. His soul power surged and a strong defense prevented the soul-eating beasts from rushing forward. Who would have thought that at this moment, the soul-devouring beasts would scatter to the sides, and the black-robed man who had injured Zichun would suddenly appear in front of Noah, attacking the light shield that Noah had erected with his palm. Bang! The palm print fell, and the light shield shattered. The defense that Noah was most proud of was broken with one blow. The power of the palm print did not diminish. It continued forward and landed on Noah's chest. Noah coughed out blood and flew backward. Taking advantage of this time, Shanya had brought Zichun to meet up with the team. Everyone retreated while fighting. The black-robed man did not continue to attack, but looked at the scene coldly, although his heart was full of the desire to devour. He liked to watch this kind of desperate scene, so he forcibly suppressed the urge to devour. He wanted all the humans to die slowly in despair. It was with this idea that Noah, who was injured, had a chance to survive. Vern and Clark rushed forward and helped him retreat. The two strongest have lost their combat power. Next, you will hide in the defense and wait for death. The black-robed man sneered. Inside the light shield, the young man's face was a little ugly. That idiot. It was such a rare opportunity, and he let it slip away just like that. If he had taken advantage of the chaos to kill Zichun, Wouldn't everything here be yours? Chapter 3689. Noah nodded. He was very glad that he had made the right choice. Outside the light shield, the black-robed man's face became very ugly. Looking at the current situation, all the soul-eating beasts would die. He looked at Zichun through the expanding light shield. The two of them looked at each other, and the black-robed man snorted. "You're lucky this time. Next time, you'll definitely die." After saying that, he turned and left. The other soul-eating beasts that were constantly attacking, or rather, seeking death, also turned and left as if they had heard the order. "They're gone, they're gone. We won. We won." Excited cheers continued to sound all around. At this moment, Zichun, who had been standing, suddenly blacked out and fell backward. Leader, Shanya, who was beside him, immediately hugged Zichun. S3, the cheers suddenly stopped, and everyone looked at Zichun worriedly. "Everyone, don't worry, bring him back to his residence first." After seeing this scene, Noah immediately said. In his perception, Zichun's aura had already recovered. Right now, it was just that he had used too much soul power, but his life was not in danger. When Zichun woke up again, it was already 2 days later. The first thing he saw when he opened his eyes was Shanya sitting next to him. "Leader, you're awake?" Shanya immediately got up and came to Zichun's side. Zichun said, "How long have I been asleep?" 2 days. Have those soul-eating beasts been here?" "Not yet." Zichun nodded slightly, then sensed his own situation. His soul power was full again, and everything was fine. "I'll go and tell everyone this news. They'll be very happy." Shanya ran out of the room. Zichun got out of bed and moved his muscles and bones. After finding that his other injuries were healed, he began to form seals. The underworld ghost appeared beside Zichun. The little guy was still agile and jumped onto Zichun's shoulder, looking very excited. As long as Zichun didn't die, the underworld ghost would not die. Zichun's soul was keeping it alive. Zichun looked at Yugue and asked, "Do you remember what happened that day?" Yugue nodded. Zichun asked again, "What exactly is going on?" Wraith sent a soul message. Zichun frowned slightly when he heard the contents of the message. Then, a cold light flashed in his eyes. "Come with me." By the time Zichun walked out of the room, Noah and the others had already rushed over after hearing the news. They just happened to see Zichun walking out of the room. Smiles appeared on everyone's faces. Noah asked, "Are you okay?" Zichun shook his head and said, "I'm fine. I've recovered." Looking at Zichun, who did not look well, Noah asked curiously, "What's the matter?" "I'm looking for someone." Zichun walked forward. The others were very curious. Their leader had just woken up, so who was he looking for? Only Noah's face had some slight changes. Under the lead of the underworld ghost, Zichun came to the area where Noah and the others lived. Along the way, Zichun passed by. Everyone bowed to Zichun. Zichun nodded slightly, then went deeper. This place was not far from Noah's own residence. Outside the door, looking at the closed door, Zichun kicked it open. Pong! The door exploded. Chapter 3690. Noah's heart skipped a beat when he saw Zichun kicking the door. During the 2 days when Zichun was asleep, the young man had said a lot to him. Most of them were requests for him to kill Zichun. "Look at me? Little?" However, Noah couldn't figure out how Zichun knew about the young man. This had always been the biggest secret in Noah's heart. The others were puzzled. They didn't understand why Zichun was here. And he kicked the door without saying a word? Not to mention the others, even the young man himself was puzzled. Zichun walked in and saw the young man. A hint of panic flashed across the young man's face. "Leader, what do you mean by this?" "Die." Zichun's eyes flashed with murderous intent. He attacked without hesitation. Soul Tremor. S3, he attacked with all his strength. He didn't have any intention of holding back. Feeling the powerful soul aura, the young man's face changed. Just as Zichun's attack approached, his figure disappeared into thin air. Yugue, who was lying on Zichun's shoulder, moved but was immediately caught by Zichun. Zichun shook his head slightly. A soul light flew out from his body and extended out of the room like a spirit snake. At this moment, the young man's figure appeared outside the room. Seeing the arrival of the spirit snake, his figure flashed again and disappeared. This time, he was dozens of feet away. When the others saw this, they were shocked. This speed was too fast. Clark and the others looked at Noah. Since there was such a strong person in their tribe, why didn't he make a move before? The spirit snake disappeared. Zichun walked out of the room and didn't continue to make a move. The young man didn't run away. Instead, he stood in the distance and looked at Zichun. He asked innocently, "Leader, what do you mean by this?" Zichun's eyes flashed with sarcasm. "Don't play dumb in front of me. Tell me everything you know. What does the leader want to know?" There was panic on the young man's face, as if he was frightened by Zichun. "Speak. Did those soul-devouring beasts come because of you?" Zichun said coldly. "Tell me the truth, or I'll throw you out right now." When the others heard this, they all looked at the young man with strange expressions. Suddenly, Noah's heart skipped a beat as he thought of something. The young man had already left at that time, but when he appeared again, the young man no longer had the arrogance of the past. There was only panic in his eyes, and he even asked him to hurry over. Could it be that the soul-devouring beast really came for him? "Leader, what kind of joke is this?" The young man said with an aggrieved expression. "I'm just a member of Noah. How can I have the honor of being targeted by all the soul-devouring beasts?" Zichun looked at the youth and said, "Since this has nothing to do with you, then the next time the soul-devouring beast comes, you must fight." The young man said dutifully, "Of course. As soul hunters, we have the right and duty to protect others." Zichun waved his hand and interrupted the young man. "I can't be bothered to talk nonsense with you. Tell me, what's the matter with that black-robed man?" The young man had a suspicious look on his face. "Even the leader doesn't know. How would I know?" Zichun extended 2 fingers and sneered. "You have 2 choices. One is that you tell me the truth, and the other is that I throw you out and let you fend for yourself. There are too many people in Kata, and I don't mind losing you." The others stared at the young man, somewhat skeptical. Seeing that Zichun didn't look like he was joking, the young man's suspicious look disappeared, and his expression began to change, as if he was considering how to speak. The others' expressions changed as well. Clearly, the young man's expression meant that he really knew something. How was this possible? They had asked in the SLS, and even Noah didn't know the origin of the black-robed man. Seeing that Zichun didn't have any intention of avoiding them, the young man could only say, "He's not human. He's from the soul-devouring clan." Soul-devouring clan? Everyone was stunned. Clearly, they had never heard of it before. "Actually, he's a soul-devouring beast, but he can take human form," the young man said. As soon as he said this, the crowd was shocked. However, Zichun's expression didn't change much. He was used to this kind of thing many years ago. "What else?" Zichun asked again. S3. Those soul-devouring beasts that you think are the leaders are actually sentient beings. Their combat strength varies, and the strongest is equivalent to level 8. As for those that can take human form, the weakest is level 9, the young man said. The soul-devouring beast siege was mainly incited by the soul-devouring clan. It's useless to kill more leaders. Only by truly killing that soul-devouring clan member can we resolve this crisis. The shock that this news brought to everyone was simply too great because it had already exceeded their understanding. However, Zichun still appeared very calm. He said to the young man, "Since you know the way, the next time they come, you'll go and finish them off." The young man immediately said with a bitter expression, "Leader, you think too highly of me. I don't have the ability to do that." Noah looked at the young man and didn't say anything. This person who had always referred to him as Lord was acting too unbearably in front of Zichun. Zichun said again, "Since you don't have the ability, what's the use of having you? Or rather, can you give me some good advice?" The young man hurriedly said, "Lord's combat strength is unparalleled. I believe that you'll be able to resolve this crisis. I remember now. If we put those sentient soul-devouring beasts into the heaven's grindstone, the life spirit fruit will be different. It might be able to speed up your breakthrough." Zichun looked deeply at the young man, then turned and left. Shanya followed and said, "Those soul-devouring beast leaders haven't been dealt with yet. They're in the original warehouse. Bring them all out. Zichun walked toward the heaven's grindstone. Yu Gue was still standing on his shoulder. The reason why Zichun went directly to the young man was because Yu Gue had sensed a different aura. Or rather, it was the Ji aura's suppression that made Yu Gue's perception not so weak. It had caused Yu Gue to be seriously disturbed, which was why Yu Gue hadn't sensed the black-robed man. When Zichun arrived in front of the heaven's grindstone, Shanya had already brought the J soul-devouring beast leaders over. However, they hadn't been put into the heaven's grindstone yet. Zichun waved his hand, and Shanya immediately released one. After the heaven's grindstone devoured the soul-devouring beast leaders, the speed at which it condensed the life-spirit fruit was much slower than usual. As the heaven's grindstone rumbled, life-spirit fruits appeared one after another. These life-spirit fruits were all suffused with a pale golden light. They were indeed different from the life-spirit fruits from before. Moreover, after refining one of the leaders, the heaven's grindstone's protective range expanded again. It had expanded quite a bit. Zichun took out a pale golden life-spirit fruit and took a bite. An even richer and purer soul power entered Zichun's body. His soul grew a little as a result. The effect was indeed much better than ordinary life-spirit fruits. Chapter 3691. For the next few soul-devouring beasts that had gained intelligence, Zichun gestured for Shanya to put them all into the divine soul heaven grinder. He took all the life-spirit fruits he obtained and did not leave any for the others. He wanted to cultivate with all his might. After returning to his room, Zichun began to refine this special life-spirit fruit. As for the others, they dispersed. Noah returned to his residence. The young man was already standing in his room. Noah was already used to this. He's starting to suspect me, the young man said after Noah closed the door. Noah said, I didn't say that. It doesn't matter. The young man waved his hand and said, so what if he suspects him? He'll still die. Have you thought about what I told you? Noah shook his head and said, Zichun can't die. If he dies, everyone will die. The young man said with a mocking expression, you're really an idiot. If he dies, you'll be in charge here. As long as you resolve the crisis here, you'll be a hero. When that time comes, Kata will become the Noah tribe again, and I'll let you advance to the 9th realm. Noah was silent, and his expression changed slightly. Think about it carefully. Do you want to be a hero, or do you want to give everything to Zichun? The young man opened the door and left Noah's room. Noah's changing expression slowly became firm. 1,000 miles away, the black-robed man stood in a dense forest with a gloomy expression. Trash, you're all trash. I just asked you to find more soul-eating beasts, but you didn't do anything. Beside him stood several soul-devouring beasts that had gained intelligence. They were also commonly known as the leaders. They all lowered their heads. The black-robed man suddenly turned around and said angrily, What? Not easy to find? Our soul-eating beasts are everywhere in this area, and you say it's not easy to find? A wave of soul power came from the consciousness of a soul-eating beast leader. Even if I asked you to keep it a secret, it's been a few days. You should have gathered enough people. The black-robed man said coldly, I don't care about anything else. I'll give you 3 more days. Within these 3 days, you must gather enough for me. A cold glint flashed in his eyes. We've dragged on for too long. The news has been leaked. Perhaps this is our last chance. Asterisk, 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 Kata completed the unification. The original village became the current tribe. Today, it reigned in the tribe. For those who had just joined Kata, this was an extremely rare soul light rain. All of them were shocked. However, for the natives of Kata, they were not surprised. They had already experienced this kind of soul rain many times. Noah walked out of the room and raised his head to feel the pure soul light rain. Hearing the cheers from the surroundings, his expression became complicated. He knew very well why such a thing had happened. Because the name of the tribe was still Kata, the benefits that Zichun obtained after his breakthrough were distributed to everyone in Kata. It could be said that Zichun was sharing the benefits that belonged to him with everyone. After personally experiencing the soul light rain, Noah finally understood one thing. What he obtained was far less than what was distributed to everyone. If the leaders of Kata were willing to do what Zichun did, Kata would not have declined. Although he did not have a good impression of Zichun, Noah had to admit that in this aspect, he was far inferior to Zichun. A sense of admiration arose spontaneously. The soul light rain was still falling. He, who had just broken through, clearly felt that he had obtained great benefits. His realm had increased a little. If this soul light rain came a few more times, he believed that he could reach the 9th realm that he had never dared to dream of. However, what shocked Noah the most was Zichun's breakthrough speed. It was too fast. From the first time he saw Zichun until now, it had only been a few months, but Zichun had advanced from the 1st realm to the 8th realm. This speed of advancement was simply terrifying. The soul light rain continued. The Kata tribe was filled with cheers, and everyone was excited. In the room, Zichun felt the strength of the 8th realm soul power. Waves of tyrannical aura were released from his body. That youth of unknown origin said that the black-robed man should be at the 9th realm, one realm higher than the current Zichun. Therefore, after breaking through, Zichun was still not careless. This was because he did not know when danger would come. At this moment, the excited cheers outside turned into panicked shouts. Zichun, who had just broken through, could not help but frown and walk out of the room. "Leader, those soul-devouring beasts are here again." Shanya ran over and happened to see Zichun at the door. "Let's go and take a look." Zichun led people out of the tribe. The other soul hunters had already heard the news and started to gather. At the border of the defense zone, Zichun saw Noah. That youth was beside him. When the young man saw Zichun, he greeted him respectfully, "Leader." At this moment, the soul-devouring beasts had already appeared in their line of sight. They were like a black flood. At first glance, there were more of them than last time. Noah and the others were very nervous. Their eyes stared straight ahead. The group of soul hunters gathered behind them were all breathing rapidly. Zichun glanced at the youth and said, "What do you think?" The others also looked at this mysterious youth. The youth looked into the distance and said, "It seems like he's staking it all on one throw. If Leader can use the divine soul heaven grind to kill all the soul-devouring beasts, then we should be able to kill him if we work together." When everyone heard this, their eyes lit up. They had seen Zichun's methods last time. As long as he used the divine soul heaven grind, all the soul-devouring beasts seemed to be sending themselves to death. In this way, didn't everyone have hope? Under everyone's expectant gaze, Zichun shook his head and said, "Using the divine soul heaven grind consumes a lot of soul power. It's impossible to kill all the soul-devouring beasts." The youth said, "Then there's no other way." Zichun glanced at the youth and said, "Later, you go outside and scout. Find that soul-devouring beast that has transformed into a human form. After we find him, we'll kill our way out and work together to kill him." "Me alone?" The youth was stunned when he heard this. "Or else," Zichun said indifferently, "you have no other choice." The youth gritted his teeth and said, "For everyone, for Kata, I'll go all out this time." The others at the back all looked at the youth with admiration. Zichun curled his lips slightly. A mocking smile stretched from the corner of his mouth. The black flood approached, bringing with it a huge impact. It slammed into the light shield. Chapter 3692. The attack launched by the soul-devouring beasts was truly a little too terrifying. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. Zichun began to form seals and used the divine soul heaven grind ability. The defensive light shield rippled and those soul-devouring beasts were being devoured. The expressions of the others eased a little. Zichun glanced at the youth and said, "It's your turn." The youth gritted his teeth and looked at everyone. "Everyone, I'll go first." His gaze finally paused on Noah for a moment. Noah's expression did not change at all, but he recalled what the youth said before. "I've already divined. If you want to kill Zichun, today is the best chance. If you can't seize it, you won't have such a heaven-sent opportunity in the future. Then your future will be firmly suppressed by Zichun, and you'll never be able to stand out." The moment the youth appeared, he was discovered by those soul-devouring beasts. At the same time, The black-robed man also noticed this scene, and a look of surprise flashed across his eyes. Oh, no longer being a coward? Then go to hell. Many soul-devouring beasts attacked the youth. The youth's figure flashed and disappeared as if teleporting. All the soul-devouring beasts were slightly stunned. Dozens of feet away, the youth's figure appeared and stepped on the head of a soul-devouring beast, causing its head to droop slightly. In the next moment, the youth's figure disappeared again, as if it was true teleportation, constantly appearing and disappearing. Many soul-devouring beasts, after launching their attacks, lost their target again and again. Even though they were very annoyed, there was nothing they could do. Within the light shield, Zichun watched silently. Actually, this was quite good. When those soul-devouring beasts lost their patience, it would naturally be the time for the existence of the soul-devouring clan to appear. Right now, the other party had not appeared, perhaps waiting for the youth's soul power to be exhausted. But the youth was clearly aware of this, but the speed of his teleportation did not decrease. Naturally, he was not worried about exhausting his soul power. At this moment, Zichun stopped forming seals. Those soul-devouring beasts were no longer devoured by the divine soul heaven grind and attacked the light shield again. Banging sounds spread all around. The soul-gnawing beasts that had been annoyed at not being able to attack the youth turned around one by one and started attacking the light shield once again. The young man was still teleporting, but there were no more soul-gnawing beasts attacking him. Just as he was slightly stunned, a dangerous aura suddenly came from his side. It was the black-robed man from the Soul Goblin clan. The other party's palm struck towards the youth's chest. Powerful soul power surged out, and the black robe on his body fluttered, making a flapping sound. A sliver of disdain flashed across the youth's eyes. His figure swayed slightly and was about to disappear once again. Right at this moment, the black-robed man's palms suddenly sped up. A ripple of soul power surged out, and the surrounding space seemed to freeze for an instant. Pong! His palm landed solidly on the young man's chest. The youth flew backwards, and the instant he landed, he was drowned by a group of soul-devouring beasts. However, the young man didn't forget his mission and shouted loudly, "He's out!" Wong! With a powerful ripple, Zichun and his men charged out of the light barrier. He took the lead and charged towards the black-robed man. The black-robed man didn't hide this time, but watched Zichun's arrival. Wherever Zichun passed, the soul-gnawing beasts flew backwards to either side. Noah and Shanya, who were also at the 8th realm, followed behind Zichun on both sides. Further behind were Vern, Clark, and the other experts. Zichun opened a straight path. The black-robed man stood indifferently, looking at the approaching Zichun. He stretched out his palm, and a powerful soul power condensed in his palm, faintly turning into the head of a beast. Zichun clenched his fist and attacked. Soul power surged out of his fist, forming a ripple that struck the palm print. Countless soul power spread out in all directions with the two of them as the center. The soul-gnawing beasts that approached were immediately sent flying. Behind Zichun, Shanya and Noah jumped up and attacked the black-robed man. Soul shock. Shanya's palm came down, using the same move as Zichun. The soul power oscillated in the same way, but the difference was the fist and the palm. In Noah's hand, the soul power quickly condensed into a long spear. Heaven Soul Spear. He held the long spear formed by soul power in his hand and stabbed towards the black-robed man's throat. The black-robed man's soul power surged in his palm, and his body slid backward. As he retreated, he quickly threw out two palms. One palm shook off Shanya's attack, and the other palm destroyed Noah's long spear. He stood 3 meters away, his black robe fluttering, and his eyes were full of coldness. Zichun's attack came, and a fierce aura shot out from his fingertips, like an arrow leaving the bow, as fast as lightning. The black-robed man leaned slightly, and the attack brushed past him. Dozens of soul power chains suddenly appeared under the black-robed man's feet, like spiritual snakes, winding around his body. A sneer appeared at the corner of the black-robed man's mouth. Soul light flew out from his body, and those soul power chains exploded in an instant. Zichun had come close, and the second attack came down. Soul split. As if there were countless sharp blades, they appeared from his palm, cutting towards the black-robed man. Soul-devouring. The black-robed man's fist seemed to have turned into a bigger beast head, with its mouth open, looking mighty and ferocious. Chi, chi, chi. The sharp blade cut the air, making a sharp sound, and the manifested beast head was torn apart in front of Zichun. But the black-robed man's offensive did not decrease at all, and he destroyed Zichun's attack. Bang! Zichun, who was hit, slid backward. At this time, Vern and Clark also rushed over, and the two of them attacked one after another. Soul power surged, and the black-robed man, who did not look at the two of them at all, easily sent them flying. The gap between the two sides was too big. In mid-air, the two of them began to cough blood, and they were seriously injured. The people behind them immediately rescued the two of them and brought them back. Noah and Shan Yu's second attack came again. The black-robed man seemed to be a little impatient, and he snorted coldly. His figure swayed, and like a black light, he came in front of Noah and sent him flying with a palm. Then, he dodged Shan Yu's following attack, flashed behind Shanya, and chopped her neck with a palm. The mountaintop fell to the ground. The black-robed man held Shanya, and a touch of greed flashed in his eyes. At this time, Zichun came in front of him and said angrily, "Put her down." Another palm strike, and a powerful soul power surged out from Zichun's body like a violent wave. The black-robed man took Shanya and retreated. "You can't go." Zichun's expression was indifferent, and he pressed on step by step. At the same time, another scene appeared in Zichun's mind. It was the day his soul power awakened, and Shanya was taken away by the soul-devouring beast. It was said that this situation had never happened before. The soul-devouring beast and the soul hunters were supposed to devour each other. At present, the soul-devouring clan injured others. If it were not for luck, Clark and the others would have been dead, but he only knocked out Shanya and took her with him. Chapter 3693. Noah was seriously injured and retreated backward. "Look at me, little?" Zichun chased after the black-robed man. The two of them kept exchanging blows. Powerful soul power rippled like waves. There was not a single soul-eating beast within a radius of dozens of feet where the two of them were fighting. Noah looked at the battle in front of him and silently retreated into the crowd. He and Zichun were both Realm 8, but he was completely useless in front of the black-robed man. However, Zichun was actually able to fight evenly with the other party. He had to admit that this was very impressive. He looked at Shanya again, and a hint of worry flashed in his eyes. Bang, bang, bang. The battle between the strongest people was still ongoing. At the back, the other soul hunters were also fighting with the soul-eating beasts. The battle was very intense. Because it determined everyone's life and death, no one dared to play any tricks. The powerful energy was still vibrating in front of them. No soul-eating beast dared to approach. S3. Zichun gradually gained the upper hand because the black-robed man's movements were inconvenient. At this moment, the black-robed man put down Shanya. He stared at Zichun and said coldly, "Since you're so eager to die, I'll fulfill your wish first." Zichun tapped the ground with his feet and rushed forward, punching out. The wind from the punch whistled. The black-robed man stretched out his palm. With a snap, he grabbed Zichun's fist and soul power surged in his palm. Soul destruction. With his fist caught, Zichun's gaze gradually turned cold. A cold killing intent appeared in Zichun's eyes. At the same time, his cold voice sounded. This was a new soul technique. It was even more powerful than Soul Tremor and Soul Split. Zichun, who had been holding back, finally found the opportunity to attack. A G of strange power surged out from his fist. With the power to destroy the soul, it surged towards the black-robed man's body. As if ice and snow met boiling water, the black-robed man's soul began to rapidly disappear. His aura was weakening. The black-robed man's expression changed drastically. This feeling was as if he had met his natural nemesis. A G of coldness emerged from the bottom of his heart. Wong. The soul power in his T-cell vibrated violently like the most terrifying torrent. It was also like a giant L rising from the depths of the sea. Its aura was violent as it wanted to destroy this G invasion. However, the effect was negligible. Zichen's soul-destroying power was like a sturdy fairy. No matter how strong the wind was or how heavy the rain was, I would still ride the wind and break through. Sensing the indestructible power of G, the black-robed man's heart was filled with fear. Am I, soul puppet, going to die here today? A deep sense of unwillingness grew in his heart. It was because he had talent, and this time, he even had an opportunity. As long as he could devour that heaven's favor, he would definitely be able to take another step forward and reach 100 levels of enlightenment. At that time, his identity would be even more respected, and his status would rise as well. Right now, he was only one step away from success. How could he be willing to die here? However, the power of G annihilation was simply too strange. It was impossible to destroy it. Despair had taken root in Soul Puppet's heart. At this moment, he felt that the power that G had been unable to destroy was actually weakening and dissipating. As for his soul, it had also stopped disappearing. In despair, he was slightly taken aback. Then, his eyes became sharp. With a loud bang, he let go of Zichen's palm. Zichen's body flew backward and landed several feet away. All of this took a long time to describe, but in fact, it happened in an instant. Everyone only felt that the black-robed man's aura had become weak, as if he had been seriously injured. As for the change in his mood, no one sensed it. Soul Puppet also took a few steps back. It was not because he was pushed back, but because he wanted to deliberately put some distance between them because he was afraid. At this moment, he stared at Zichen, who was several feet away, and said coldly, "I gave you a chance. Unfortunately, your realm is too low and you didn't seize it. Now, it's time for you to die." Soul power began to drain from his body. A huge, soul-devouring beast phantom appeared behind him. The soul-devouring beast was several feet tall, and it was staring coldly at Zichen. Zichen's expression changed. A strong sense of danger rose in his heart. The young man, who was supposed to be swallowed by the soul-devouring beast, suddenly appeared from another direction. After seeing the scene on the battlefield, his eyes lit up and he became very excited. It's the soul-devouring technique, the special ability of the soul-devouring clan. Zichen is dead for sure this time. He quietly retreated with a cold smile on his face. Soul-devouring technique? Soul Puppet's cold voice rang out. The huge, soul-devouring beast opened its mouth, and the surrounding soul power began to flow rapidly. Zichen forcibly dispelled the sense of danger in his heart and then ran forward. At this moment, he only had one thought, and that was to finish off his opponent before he launched his powerful attack. Soul-devouring technique. He struck out with his palm at Soul Puppet's chest. S3, he was very fast, but the soul-devouring beast phantom behind him was even faster. The huge soul-devouring beast immediately pounced forward and bit at Zichen. At this moment, Zichen's soul-devouring technique had already landed on Soul Puppet. Fight it out. This was the thought in Zichen's mind. However, at this moment, the Soul Puppet that was supposed to be hit by him suddenly disappeared. His attack missed its target. Idiot, that's fake. In the distance, the young man's lips curled into a mocking smile. Zichen's attack missed, and the soul-devouring beast's body also passed through him at this moment. Like an illusory shadow, the soul-devouring beast flew several feet away and then disappeared. Haneo stood there, back to back with Zichen. Under everyone's nervous gaze, Soul Puppet turned around. He looked at Zichen in front of him with a mocking smile on his face. Zichen slowly turned around and looked at Soul Puppet. Haneo laughed. "Do you think I'm bluffing? Yet you're unharmed?" Zichen opened his mouth slightly. At this moment, his soul power began to drain rapidly. A sense of weakness rose in his heart. His body swayed and he fell. The battle in the distance also stopped at this moment. The soul hunters and soul-devouring beasts all looked in this direction. This move is called soul devouring. It can devour your soul, but it won't kill you instantly. Your soul power will drain for a certain period of time until you die. Soul Puppet looked at Zichen and said, "Before you die, do you have anything to say?" Zichen, who was obviously very weak, opened his mouth and said, "Be careful." The Soul Puppet laughed out loud. Could it be that his opponent was an idiot? "You're about to die. Yet you're reminding me? His laughter suddenly came to an abrupt halt. A gigantic exotic beast stood where the soul puppet had been standing. It was an enlarged specter. Zichun gave the final attack to his opponent. Its body began to expand, and powerful soul power surged in its stomach. Soul puppet was nowhere to be seen. The surroundings were silent, or rather, dead silent. Everyone, man and beast, seemed to have been petrified. Chapter 3694. Everything happened so quickly that it was unimaginable. Previously, Zichun was clearly at a disadvantage. Who would have thought that he would turn the situation around in an instant? The black-robed man had disappeared. The ghost returned to its original appearance and came to Zichun's shoulder. Its aura was very unstable, sometimes strong and sometimes weak. Its body seemed like it could explode at any time. What the hell was that? The youth in the distance widened his eyes and looked in front of him in disbelief. Zichun, who should have been dead, had turned the situation around just like that. Shanya was still lying not far away, still unconscious. Zichun's aura was getting weaker and weaker. No one knew how long he could hold on. The others remained motionless, still unable to recover from the shock from before. The youth's eyes lit up as if he had seen hope. He used a secret technique to send out a voice. Now is your best chance. If you miss it, you won't be able to grasp it again. This sentence was said to Noah, and only he could hear it. The other party immediately reacted and shouted, "Protect the leader." The others also came to their senses and shouted loudly as they rushed forward. At this moment, everyone's morale was unprecedentedly high. The soul-devouring beasts did not attack immediately. Instead, they all chose to retreat. The youth stood in the distance and watched this scene silently. Noah was the first to rush to Zichun's side. The standing Zichun finally could not hold on and knelt down. A cruel smile flashed across the youth's lips. Noah came to Zichun's side and reached out his hand. He grabbed Zichun and shouted, "Protect us as we retreat." The cruel smile on the youth's face froze. With Noah in the lead, the group quickly retreated. Shanya, who was not far away, had also been taken away. Everyone had successfully retreated. The youth's face was very gloomy. However, there were many people here, so he did not flare up. Instead, he walked closer. Zichun's aura was still weak. Perhaps he would die immediately. However, when he walked closer, Zichun's weak aura stabilized. Damn thing, can't you hold on a little longer? The young man was infuriated. He cast a look at Zichun's shoulder. He didn't know where this pet came from, but it was able to devour the soul gobblers. That had surprised him. Zichun's life had stopped flowing because that guy was completely dead. As a result, Zichun's life was saved. Shanya quickly regained consciousness. When she saw Zichun's condition, she immediately approached him. This time, Zichun did not faint, but his breath was very weak. He took out a pale golden life spirit fruit and swallowed one. Yugue had fallen asleep on his shoulder. Zichun stood up. Under the worried gazes of the crowd, he waved his hand and said, "I'm fine." His victory this time was largely due to luck. Moreover, his opponent seemed to be too confident, so he was careless and allowed Yugue to seize the opportunity. The soul-gnawing beasts had all retreated, and the strongest soul-gnawing beast had been killed by Zichun. The crisis had been averted. The crowd was cheering. Zichun went back to the tribe. His injuries were serious, and he needed to be healed as soon as possible. So did Vern and Clark. Their lives were hanging by a thread. Noah and Shanya were injured to varying degrees. Zichun went back to his room to tend to his wounds. The shield released by the Heaven's Grindstone was still there. The entire Kata tribe was celebrating. The celebration lasted for 2 full days. During those 2 days, some people went out and only saw some scattered soul-gnawing beasts. They didn't see any in groups. They even hunted some soul-gnawing beasts and brought them back. Everything seemed to have returned to normal. Thus, some of the former leaders had different thoughts in their hearts. For example, going back to where they used to live. Everyone was united, but they were not familiar with each other. That feeling of unfamiliarity made many people uncomfortable. Moreover, some people had a strong desire to be a leader. Naturally, they didn't want to be under others. In the room, the former leader Dalt looked at his trusted subordinates. He waved his hand and said, "We'll talk about this later. For now, we'll stay in kata and not go anywhere." Some people nodded with gratification. Some people felt regretful. Dalt's gaze swept across everyone's faces. He said, "The current crisis has been averted. But who can guarantee that there won't be a second soul-gnawing clan? When that time comes, what will you do? Come back to kata?" Dalt smiled indifferently. "Let's not talk about whether leader Zichun is willing to accept us again. Even if he is, who can guarantee that everyone will be able to make it back in time?" Everyone fell silent. This was also their concern. Although the danger had been averted, no one could guarantee what the future would be like. Staying here was undoubtedly the safest. Dalt waved his hand and everyone dispersed. After everyone left, his expression gradually turned cold. "I'm indeed old, and my soul power has deteriorated quite a bit. However, that doesn't mean that my brain has deteriorated as well. You guys are still too childish." If he left now, danger would befall him again in the future. Some of the instigators today would push him out to be the culprit in the future. As the former leader, he was not stupid. The same thing was happening in other places. But until now, no one had expressed their willingness to leave. Such a large tribe consumed a large number of life spirit fruits every day. Although Kata had a lot of life spirit fruits after this battle, Shanair still signaled Shanya, who had recovered from his injuries, to lead the team out to hunt and ensure that they had enough. The hunting team was large and majestic. During this period, the one who received the most attention was Noah. Many people were waiting to see what choice he would make after the crisis. However, he went out to hunt every day. He was very hard-working, as if he really treated himself as a member of Kata. On the fourth day, Zichen's injuries were completely healed. Furthermore, his cultivation had improved. He walked out of the room to look for the youth. Noah and the others had already gone out to hunt. The youth was still in his room. This time, Zichun did not knock on the door. He just pushed it open and entered. Looking at the youth sitting there, he said, "I thought you were dead." The youth smiled. "Thank you for your concern. I'm lucky to be alive." Zichun said, "You should know why I'm here, right?" The youth was confused. Chapter 3695. Hearing Zichun's question, the young man's expression clearly changed. Looking at the little, he shook his head and said, I don't know. Zichun glanced at him and mocked. "Oh, looks like you don't want to say? Why, do you think the crisis has been resolved?" The young man quickly shook his head, somewhat fearful. "Tell me what's going on. I don't want to die without knowing why." Zichun looked at the suspicious young man and said, "You're good at pretending to be stupid. I can't be bothered to expose you one by one. Hurry up and tell me what's going on with Shanya. Otherwise, I can only chase you away." Feeling Zichun's gradually sharpening gaze, the young man sighed and said helplessly, "She's favored by the heavens." Favored by the heavens? Zichun was slightly startled. This term was too unfamiliar. But this also indirectly proved that his guess was correct. This young man indeed knew everything. The young man said, "Leader, you should have noticed it, right? Every time you break through, Shanya will break through as well. This is the favor of the heavens. She was born with the favor of the heavens. Her talent is extremely high." "I naturally know her talent. What I want to know is, what's going on with Shanya? Is the Soul Gobbling clan here for her?" The young man did not immediately answer this question, but fell silent. Zichun did not rush him. He sat down and quietly waited for him to continue. After a while, the young man took the initiative to say, "Leader, do you know of the Soul Emptiness Realm?" "Soul Emptiness Realm?" "Yes, another realm. But to the people here, it's completely a legend. Let's not talk about anything else. Take Noah, for example. His greatest pursuit in life is to reach Realm 8. He doesn't even dare to think about Realm 9. The Soul Emptiness Realm is something he has never dreamed of." The young man said, "The Soul Gobbling clan that Lord J killed a few days ago, his true realm was Realm 9. Although he was only one realm away from Soul Emptiness Realm, there's a world in between." Zichun asked, "What's the relationship between Shanya and the Soul Void Realm?" The young man's voice had a hint of solemnity. "Because Shanya is the heavenly mandate. She came with the blessing of the heavens. Once we devour her soul, we'll be able to ascend to the heavens in a single step, becoming an existence at the soul void realm. That's another world, a realm that many people can't touch and don't even dare to dream of. Zichen's expression changed. He had not expected Shanya to be so useful. In that case, the answer was obvious. The soul-devouring beasts that came here were here for her. Looking at the transformed Zichen, the youth said, I see that Leader's realm has increased by quite a bit. Once Leader reaches the 9th realm, then he will be able to feel the suppression from this world. At that time, Leader will understand how difficult it is to advance to the soul illusion realm. It's so big that it's almost impossible to break through. However, the heavenly blessing is not only useful to the soul-devouring clan, it's also useful to the Leader. Zichen stared at the youth and said, What did you say? The heavenly blessing is useful to everyone, and it's the same for Leader. The youth said, Moreover, as far as I know, to advance to the soul void realm, only the help of the heavenly blessing is needed. Zichen did not ask how the other party knew. Instead, he stood up, turned around, and left. The matter that the youth said brought him quite a bit of shock. He needed some time to digest it. Leaving the youth's room, Zichen saw the return of a hunting team. The leader was Shanya. She also saw Zichen and immediately came over. Leader, you've recovered? Zichen nodded. Then, the two walked side by side towards the divine soul heaven grindstone. Shanya tilted her head, looked at Zichen, and asked, Leader, do you think our crisis is over? Zichen smiled when he heard this and looked at Shanya. Why are you asking this? Shanya said somewhat embarrassedly, Recently, some people have said that the crisis is over and they plan to leave. Actually, I feel that it's not over yet. As long as you say it, the others will definitely not object. I can understand your feelings of wanting to strengthen kata, but there's no meaning in forcing those who don't want to stay here. Zichen looked at Shanya and said, Now that you're at level 8, you have the ability to strengthen kata. It's just that you need a little more time. Shanya grew up in kata, so she naturally had deep feelings for this place. She had always been thinking about how to strengthen kata. She nodded, understanding Zichen's meaning. Only those who were on the same side would have cohesion. S3. When they arrived in front of the divine soul heaven grindstone, Zichen and Shanya parted ways. He returned to his room, unable to calm down. He did not expect that Shanya's existence would have such an effect. That evening, Noah returned to his residence. The young man appeared in a flash in his room and said straightforwardly, Zichen already knows about Shanya. Noah's expression suddenly changed. He turned and stared at the young man. What did he say? He didn't say anything, but I can see that he has this intention. He's very moved, the young man said. It's not that easy to devour the divine soul heaven's favor. It requires a certain ceremony, so I didn't tell him. Noah's expression changed, and there was a hidden ruthlessness in his eyes. Have you thought it through? If you're willing, I can help you devour Shanya, and the price you have to pay is to help me kill Zichen. The young man said again, at that time, you'll be the true number 1 person in Area P forever. Can I ask, why do you want Zichen to die? Noah looked at the young man. This involves a huge secret. You just need to know that if he continues to live, not only will he be a problem for me, but he will also be a problem for you. The young man said, Think about it. How long did it take for you to break through to level 8? How long did it take for Zichen and Shanya to break through to level 8? This was also why Noah was helpless about Zichen, because Zichen's breakthroughs were too fast. He doesn't belong to this world, so his appearance is wrong. As for Shanya, her appearance is an opportunity given by the heavens. She belongs to whoever can grab hold of her. The young man looked at Noah, who had sunk into silence, and said, The crisis this time hasn't been resolved yet. The Soul Goblin clan will definitely not let this go, so you'd better make a decision in advance. When the crisis really comes, everything will be too late. After saying that, his figure disappeared. When he returned to his room, a cold smile appeared at the corner of the young man's mouth. Zichen, I'll see how you choose this path. Your trial will end here in the end, because the path I provide for you will ultimately lead to a dead end. The young man's complacent laughter came from the room. Chapter 3696. In the room, Zichun was still cultivating. He could sense that the crisis was not over yet, and that there would be greater dangers waiting for him in the future. Just like the first time his perception appeared and allowed Kata to survive, the crisis this time was not only for Kata, but also related to his trial. However, Zichun was not sure what he should do at the moment. However, there was nothing wrong with making himself stronger. Shanya went out hunting every day, and she had a good harvest. Noah followed beside her. He was a little absent-minded when hunting, but as a level 8, he would not make a mistake. Several days passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, Shan Er came to Zichun's room and hesitated. In the room, Zichun's soul sensed Shan Er's presence. He opened his eyes and said, "Come in." Hearing the chief's voice, Shan Er had to open the door and walk in. "What's the matter?" Zichun got off the bed and walked out of the bedroom. Shan Er was very hesitant. "Just say it." Zichun smiled and gestured for Shan Er to sit down. Shan Er thought for a while and said, "Recently, there have been a few incidents of friction in the tribe." "Oh, some of them want to leave?" Who was Zichun? He had experienced too many things, and he understood Shan Er's intention with just one sentence. Shan Er nodded and said, "Although I didn't say it explicitly, that's what I meant. I also told some people that the crisis is not really over, but the effect is not great. These few days, the friction has become more and more intense." Shan Er's face was full of worry. Zichun said, "Since they want to leave, then let them do as they please. Go and tell the former chiefs that if anyone wants to leave, they can leave with their team. But if anyone wants to stay, Kata welcomes them. From soul hunters to ordinary people, we welcome them all." In Kata, Zichun's words were orders. Shan Er expressed his understanding and turned to leave. That evening, after everyone had returned, Shan Er conveyed Zichun's message. His words were very clear. Kata welcomed everyone who wanted to stay, including the ordinary people who couldn't become soul hunters. At this point, the matter was clear, and it was time for everyone to make a choice. IZA am willing to stay. Everyone else is free to leave. The former leader of IZA had made his choice. Compared to his own small place, his life had undoubtedly become much better after coming to Kata. As for the rest of the people in IZA, they were naturally unwilling to leave. It was good to stay in Kata. I, Gerton, am also willing to stay. Gudun also expressed his stance and said, "As for my people, if any of you wish to leave, I will not stop you." Steward Shan Er, if I may ask, how can I exchange for the life soul fruit after I leave? At this moment, an old voice rang out. It was Dalter. Beside Dalter, the few soul hunters' expressions were somewhat agitated. Everyone looked at Shan Er when they heard this. Obviously, this was a very important point. Shan Er glanced at the old man, then swept his gaze across the crowd and said, "My leader has said that everyone is free to leave. As for the life soul fruit, there will be no payment. It will be free." There was an uproar in the crowd. Clearly, they didn't expect Zichun to be so magnanimous. Not only did he allow everyone to leave, but he also allowed them to exchange for free. Dalter nodded. Under the fervent gazes of the people around him, he said, "I choose to stay. As for the rest, please leave." The people around him were stunned. Clearly, they didn't expect Dalter to be unwilling to leave. Under the astonished gazes of the crowd, Dalter turned and left. Only his laughter was still heard. Those who originally followed Dalter were stunned and didn't know what to do. The others also didn't know what to say, so they just stood there. "If I want to leave, who will follow me?" Suddenly, a voice rang out from the crowd. Hanrue walked over from the back. This soul hunter who once came from Kata was forced to stay here during this period of time. Now, he finally had a chance to leave. His cultivation was not high. Many people laughed disdainfully when they saw Hanrue, who was the first to speak. What could a mere second level do? However, Hanrue didn't care because he was only the beginning. With him taking the lead, it would be less awkward for the others when they made their choice. Leader Zichun has already treated us well enough. Now that things have come to this, how can we continue to stay here and take advantage of Leader and Kata? Count me in as well. Following this, a second person spoke. This was a fourth level being. With someone taking the lead, Those who had already thought of leaving all tactfully expressed their opinions. Shanair didn't stop them and just watched. He naturally welcomed those who were willing to stay. Amongst them, the ordinary people who were willing to stay made up a large portion. Compared to returning to their original place, they were naturally more willing to stay in the tribe. As such, a large portion of people chose to stay. As for those who wanted to leave, they were soul hunters who had hopes and dreams for the future. Evidently, they didn't want to live a mediocre life here. Perhaps in their hearts, they all had the desire to become the strongest. Of course, it was also possible that it was just for the reward after becoming the chief. Hence, 2 days later, those soul hunters formed groups and left. From now on, their groups would develop into a village. Noah, who received the most attention, still chose to stay here. A portion of his original tribe chose to form another tribe. Zichun didn't blame those who left. Instead, he sent them off when they left. About a third of the people left. This made the Kata tribe quieter, but also more spacious. Those who stayed no longer had any conflicts. Everyone got along very well. The young man didn't appear and stayed in his room. Another 3 days passed. About a month had passed since the previous disaster. Everything was calm and peaceful. It seemed that the crisis had really passed. Because of that, some people started to have thoughts of leaving. However, on a certain day, a black torrent suddenly appeared. From one end of this region, it flooded towards another end. Where the torrent passed, not even a blade of grass was left alive. Those who left Kata to form another tribe were the first to bear the brunt. They were all submerged by the torrent. This time, the flood was even more ferocious. No one survived. The torrent continued to move forward until it reached Kata. Buzz. A light barrier rose from the center of Kata and blocked the torrent. Chapter 3697. During this period of time, everything was peaceful, causing many people to have thoughts of leaving. Some people really took action, while others were just observing, thinking of waiting first. But now, seeing the densely packed, soul-devouring beasts outside, those who were still observing could only rejoice in their hearts. They rejoiced that they had not made the choice to leave. But in the next moment, this rejoicing disappeared. Their line of sight was rising bit by bit until they looked at the sky. There was a person standing there. To be precise, it was the same black-robed person as before. He had escaped the shackles of the earth and stood in the air without using anything. He could fly? Was he a god? In the next moment, many of the ordinary people of the Kata tribe who were hiding in the light barrier knelt down and kowtowed to the sky. Although Noah and the others did not kneel down, their expressions were also filled with shock. Zichun walked out of the room and saw the middle-aged man in the sky. Compared to the others, his expression was much calmer. It turned out that the soul void realm could allow one to escape the shackles of heaven and earth and reach another height. But now, he did not relax at all, because it was obvious that this person did not come with good intentions. Most importantly, he was still at Realm 8 and had not broken through yet. Foolish humans, how do you want to die? In the sky, the black-robed person said indifferently. His words directly brought despair to everyone. This godlike existence was actually here to kill them. Zichun walked forward. The barrier could block the soul-devouring beasts, but it could not block the black-robed person's line of sight. He saw Zichun. Zichun was also looking at him, still walking forward. Shanya came to Zichun's side. Zichun slowly shook his head and continued to walk forward. The youth did not appear. This time, it was because he was afraid that he had been hiding in the room. Noah walked in front of Shanya, but did not follow Zichun out. Zichun walked out of the light barrier, and the soul-devouring beasts that had stopped retreated. I am the leader here. May I know what the Soul Void Realm Lord wants? Zichun looked up at the black-robed person and said, Leader, did you kill Soul Puppet? The figure of the black-robed man slowly descended, and a strong pressure fell on Zichun, making it difficult for him to breathe. I don't know who the Soul Puppet is, but I did kill a member of the Soul Eater clan a few days ago because he wanted to destroy all of us, Zichun said under great pressure. What an arrogant tone. Does that mean you want to kill me too? The black-robed man's gaze turned extremely cold. In the light shield behind him, Everyone was silent as they nervously looked ahead. Zichen said calmly, "How about a life for a life? My lord, kill me and let everyone go?" In an instant, everyone was moved. Clearly, the leader was willing to sacrifice himself to protect others. Even Noah's expression changed. "A life for a life? You think you're worthy?" The soul void realm black-robed person gave a cold snort and said, "Even if I kill all of you, it also can't make up for the death of the soul puppet." The black-robed man was filled with killing intent. The people behind him were in despair. Zichen's expression was still calm as he said, "How about I find a special existence to pay with my life?" Behind him, Noah frowned, and killing intent surged in his eyes. The trace of emotion from before had disappeared. Shanya was very puzzled. Clearly, she did not understand what Zichen meant by special existence. "Oh, special existence? Do you think she can pay for Soul Puppet's life?" The black-robed man looked at Zichen with a mocking expression. "I'm not sure, but it's always worth a try." "Then let me see who she is." The black-robed man's gaze swept toward Shanya, and there was a hint of mockery in his eyes. He withdrew the pressure on his body. Noah took a step forward and blocked Shanya with his body. At this moment, Zichen's voice sounded, "Noah, go and drag out that guy hiding in the room. Whether we can survive or not depends on him." Noah, who was tall, had a ferocious look on his face. He was about to fly into a rage, but when he heard the content of Zichen's words, he was stunned. In his heart, he had always thought that Zichen was going to hand over Shanya. "Don't be stunned. Get that guy out. Our Kata tribe needs him," Zichen said again, but this time his tone was colder. Noah reacted, but he was still hesitant. The others looked at the place where the young man lived. In the Kata tribe, everyone knew that handsome young man who knew everything. At the same time, everyone knew that he was extremely mysterious. Just like Chief Zichen, he seemed to have descended from the heavens and knew a lot. At this moment, the young man's room door opened by itself, and he walked out. The handsome young man had an aggrieved look on his face. He walked forward, unafraid of death. Along the way, the villagers all lowered their heads, not daring to look at the young man. The young man walked to the edge of the light shield and said, "I didn't expect Chief to push me out like this." Zichen said bluntly, "If you can really save all of us, why can't you?" Zichen pointed at the young man and said, "Do you think he can?" The black-robed man was surprised. He thought that the young man would bring out the God's chosen. He didn't expect him to bring out the heaven's wrath. The black-robed man nodded and said, "Of course he can." Zichen smiled. The young man's target was the girl. As for Shanya, she was useless to the soul void realm. But in the next moment, his smile froze. The young man said, "But I want that God's chosen too." Then, he pointed at Shanya. Shanya was still confused, but Noah's expression changed. "That's not good, right?" Zichen's expression changed for the first time. "Sir, you're already at the soul void realm. What use do you have for the God's chosen?" The black-robed man smiled and said, "I have no use for it, but I can give it to others. I have friends too. I can exchange it for a favor, right?" Looking at Zichen's ugly expression, the black-robed man smiled again and said, "I admire your decisiveness. I hope you can be decisive again. Okay, now you can go back and think about it." "Yes, I'll give you 3 days to think about it. I'll wait for your reply after 3 days." The black-robed man flew away. He didn't take the young man with him. Instead, he left him here. Those soul-devouring beasts retreated, but they only retreated 100 feet. Obviously, they were on guard against others escaping in these 3 days. Zichen turned and walked toward Kata. But compared to the calmness he had when he came out, Zichen seemed to be in a daze this time. The young man followed behind Zichen, neither happy nor sad. Zichen walked into the light shield. Everyone looked at him. Zichen didn't say anything. He was silent all the way until he reached the room and closed the door. Chapter 3698. He didn't care at all, because there was no solution to this situation. As for the outcome, he didn't care at all. Zichen was still in the room and didn't come out. The Kata tribe was strangely quiet. Panic and despair filled the air. No one left, not because they didn't want to, but because they didn't dare. The soul-eating beasts surrounded the entire tribe, but no one dared to go out to hunt. That godlike existence was nowhere to be found. Night fell, and the land was covered in darkness. This was even more despairing. Torches lit up and appeared in some places outside of the Kata tribe. Although the experts said that they would be given 3 days, some people were still uneasy. They were afraid that the soul-eating beasts would suddenly attack, so they chose to keep watch. S3, Noah stayed in his room. He frowned, and there was deep helplessness in his eyes. This place had been safe for many years. Why was it so unsafe during this period of time? The young man suddenly appeared. As for Noah, who had always been extremely respectful to the young man, this time, he only glanced at him and didn't say a word. The young man did not mind it. He walked to the opposite side of Noah and sat down. He took the initiative to say, "I can understand your feelings now. No one is willing to see their own child die." Noah didn't respond. The young man continued, "But have you thought about how many innocent people will die if we can't solve this crisis? How many innocent children have been killed in this process?" Noah said sarcastically, "Don't you only care about Zichen's life and death? Why would you care about others?" Noah's attitude was so rude, but the young man wasn't angry. "I do want Zichen to die, but since there's a way to save everyone, I'm willing to help. If you choose to devour Shanya, I'll help you." Noah stared at the young man and said word by word, "I will never devour Shanya." The young man spread his hands and said, "Then there's no other way. After 3 days, according to Zichen's character, he will definitely kill Shanya. Even if he doesn't kill her, he will devour her himself. Shanya will die in the end." The young man held up 3 fingers and said, 3 days. You only have 3 days to consider. After 3 days, you won't have the chance to devour her." Noah was still indifferent. The young man said resentfully, "Do you really think Zichen is thinking of a solution? Don't joke around. He doesn't have a choice at all. Right now, he's just staying in his room to pass the time. Once the 3 days are up, he'll definitely make the choice I mentioned." Noah glanced at the young man and said firmly, "I will never devour Shanya." Hearing this, the young man was enraged. "You idiot! How can you be so stubborn? I gave you a chance to become a powerful being, and you actually gave it up? Someone like you will never have a future. Do you know that the Soul Void Realm is another level that many people dream of? You're actually willing to give up?" Noah emphasized, "This is not giving up. This is not mine to begin with. Besides, Shanya is a human being, a real human being." "Humph. You idiot. You treat her as a human, but does Zichen treat her as a human? Let's see what you'll do when Zichen tries to refine her. Step forward to stop him. He'll kill you first, then devour Shanya in front of your corpse." After saying this, the young man left in a huff. He pulled the door with all his might and did not choose to teleport. A gust of cold air fell from above and landed on Noah's body. He gently wiped his cheek and found that there was water. He tilted his head and looked at his body. It was wet. Chapter 3699. Noah wiped his face again and couldn't help but laugh bitterly. It was raining. Was the heavens crying out in sorrow? But then, his expression changed as he found the problem. This was a room with a broken ceiling. How could it be raining? He raised his head to look at the sky and saw countless drizzles falling slowly like cow's hair. The drizzles penetrated the room and fell on his body. Noah's eyes suddenly widened, and there was disbelief in his eyes. He guessed a possibility. The youth walked out of the room. This time, he was really angry. Damn Noah. Not only was he disrespectful to him, he was also stubborn. Suddenly, he felt something strange. He raised his head to look at the sky and saw countless drizzles. As someone with an extraordinary background, he naturally saw the abnormality of the drizzles. He was a little surprised. He actually broke through? That night, Kata was in despair. Everyone felt a strong uneasiness in their hearts. At this moment, it started raining in the room they were in. First, they were stunned. Then, the shock quickly turned into ecstasy. This was because the rain was a rarely seen spiritual light rain. It was extremely beneficial to one's body. Moreover, compared to the last time, the spiritual light rain this time around was even more intense. The spiritual energy contained within it was even purer and more powerful. That night, many people broke through their realms. The panic eased a little, because everyone knew that such a phenomenon was leader Zichen breaking through. And Zichen stayed in the room and didn't come out. Obviously, he had been cultivating. At the same time, Shanya also broke through smoothly. Her identity as God's favored one played a role again. But that night, she couldn't sleep for a long time. The soul light rain lasted for an unprecedentedly long time, because Zichen had reached the 9 realms. After reaching this realm, he felt the bottleneck for the first time. Compared to the suppression last time, it was much stronger. Between the 9 realms and the soul empty realm, there seemed to be a complete world. Zichen opened his eyes. Due to the strong pressure, he broke through a few days earlier than expected. But it was obviously impossible to advance another level. He rubbed the card tower world in his hand and fell into deep thought. The next day, when the sky was bright, Shanya, who had not slept the whole night, left the room. She didn't look for Zichen. Instead, she looked for the teenager. The young man seemed to have guessed that Shanya would return. A sincere smile appeared on his face. "Sit. Congratulations. You've made another breakthrough. You're indeed blessed by the heavens." Shanya sat opposite the young man and glanced at him. "If there's anything you want to ask, feel free to ask. I'm in a good mood today, so I'll tell you everything I know." The young man pulled over a wooden chair and sat down. "Is there any way to resolve this crisis?" Shanya asked. The young man was very surprised. He didn't expect Shanya to ask this question first. His expression became serious. After a slight hesitation, he said, "There is a way to resolve it, and there are 2 ways. Shanya did not continue to ask but listened quietly. The young man didn't keep her in suspense and said directly, "The first way is for Zichen to hand you and me over. Then the crisis will be resolved and everyone will be saved. The second way is for Zichen to devour your soul and break the shackles to advance to the soul illusionary realm. After killing that guy, the crisis will naturally be resolved." Shanya looked into the young man's eyes and said, "In your heart, you want to use the second way, right?" The young man nodded and said, "That's right. First of all, in this way, I don't have to die. Sacrificing you will save everyone. Moreover, who can guarantee that guy won't go back on his words and not continue to slaughter others after Zichen hands you and me over? So, no matter how you look at it, the second way is the safest." Shanya's expression did not change much. She continued, "Then how can you guarantee that after Zichen devours my soul, he will be able to smoothly break through to the next realm?" The young man smiled again and said, "Originally, I only had 80% confidence. However, last night, Zichen had already broken through to the next realm, and you have also reached the 9th realm. Not only do I have 100% confidence, but I can also guarantee that after breaking through to the next realm, Zichen will definitely be able to kill that despicable guy who is also at the soul illusionary realm." Seeing Shanya's expression start to change, the young man continued, "At that time, Zichen will be a hero. There will be nothing in this area that can suppress him, and Kata will become the largest tribe in this area. It will last for a long time." Shanya seemed to see the scene that the young man described. Countless people were cheering for Zichen, and the entire kata was filled with people. It was a bustling scene. Wasn't this what she wanted? As long as she sacrificed herself, then everyone would be saved. The hesitant Shanya suddenly made up her mind. She stood up and said, "How do I devour him?" The young man said, "There needs to be some ceremony. However, don't worry. After all, you saved me. I will help you complete the ceremony." Noah nodded and turned to walk out of the room. The young man said again, "Don't go looking for Zichen today. Go early tomorrow morning. The ceremony won't take long. It will be just in time for the battle the day after tomorrow." Okay. Shanya left the room. After Shanya left, Noah came over. The young man looked at Noah and said with a smile, "Look, you didn't grab hold of such a great opportunity. Now, Shanya has decided to give this opportunity to Zichen. Of course, if you agree, I still have a way to give it to you." In one night, Noah seemed to have become more haggard. He said weakly, "Shanya has the right to choose what she wants. It has nothing to do with me." "Then you don't want to become stronger?" The young man looked at Noah and said mockingly, Are you willing to let others take away the opportunity that belongs to you? Noah said in a low voice, Of course I want to become stronger, but I don't want to do it this way. A look of surprise flashed in the young man's eyes. He didn't expect Noah to have such awareness. However, his expression quickly changed. He said with some surprise, You also broke through? Just last night, under the countless drizzling rain, Noah broke through to the 9th level. At that time, he couldn't believe it. It seems that the power I gave you back then still has a lot of energy left. It made you improve a lot. That's why you have this breakthrough. The young man sighed and said in a strange tone, It's a pity that some people don't appreciate it. Zichun stayed in his room for the whole day. Unable to see their leader who had broken through, the people in Kata didn't have any confidence. Shanya also stayed in her room and didn't come out. The atmosphere in Kata was too depressing. Early in the morning of the 3rd day, Shanya left her room and went to Zichun's room. Chapter 3700 / It's already come to this. He has no other way. The youth said loudly, His so-called method is to send you and me out tomorrow. If this is really the leader's intention, then I'm willing. Shanya's voice came from the room. The youth snorted coldly and turned to leave. He directly went to find Noah and said straightforwardly, I've already decided. This opportunity is yours. Noah smiled, just that there was an additional trace of mockery in his smile. Humph, then all of you can wait for death. The youth said coldly, Don't think that guy will be kind enough to let you all go. This is impossible. He will kill everyone in the end. The youth returned to the room, furious. On this day, Zichun stayed in the room to cultivate. And for the others, this day was extremely torturous. S3, the sky darkened. Dawn. Finally, the fateful day arrived. When Taiwai rose, the soul-devouring beasts moved forward together, and the soul void realm appeared in the sky. Everyone in the Kata tribe walked out of the room, waiting for the arrangement of fate. This included the youth. The group of villagers turned their heads and saw Zichun. The crowd parted, and Zichun walked forward. His expression was very calm. This calmness seemed to have infected everyone. Many people's suppressed emotions were relieved. Pretending to be mysterious, aren't you just trying to send us out? The youth had a face of mockery. But do you think you can survive like this? You're too naive. Zichun did not hear the youth's words. Even if he heard it, he would not care. He kept walking forward until he walked out of the light barrier under everyone's gaze. Those soul-devouring beasts immediately retreated. The soul void realm black-robed man looked down at Zichun and said, Have you thought it through? Zichun nodded and said, After thinking about it for an entire night, I have indeed thought it through. The soul void realm existence laughed mockingly and said, Not only did you not sleep for an entire night, you also broke through your realm. I was just lucky. Zichun said calmly, I don't care if you were lucky or not. Now, tell me your choice, the black-robed man said. After careful consideration, I still feel that I can only give it to you. I can't give you the heavenly blessing because she is my friend, Zichun said firmly. The others at the back naturally heard Zichun's words, and their expressions changed. What? Do you know what the consequences of your choice will be? The black-robed man narrowed his eyes, and there was a chill in his eyes. Zichun said calmly, I know. Then do you know that the reason why I gave you 3 days was because I pitied you all? There was a cold killing intent in the black-robed man's eyes. If I want to kill you, it will only take a snap of my fingers. Zichun said again, I know that too. That's why I feel that it's useless to give you the heavenly blessing. This is also the only thing I insist on. You can take that guy away, but Tianbao has to stay. The black-robed man suddenly burst into laughter. His laughter was filled with arrogance and contempt. You think you're qualified to negotiate with me? Zichun emphasized, This is not a negotiation. This is my insistence. The black-robed man said disdainfully, And if I don't agree? Zichun said solemnly, Then I'm very sorry. You have to step over my corpse to get everything you want. Chapter 3701 Zichun's choice was beyond everyone's expectations. An uproar came from behind. The youth was a little stunned. Clearly, He did not expect that Zichun would make such a choice. Shanya ran forward. How could Zichun, who was at level 9, be a match for someone at the Soul Void realm? Stop her! Zichun shouted loudly. Noah went forward and stopped Shanya. You will die. Shanya shouted loudly. Zichun said without turning his head, I don't know if I will die or not, but I know one thing very clearly. As long as I am alive, I will never let you take the risk. Didn't I say before that life is not easy to come by? Then don't give up so easily. If Zichun died here, he would only lose a chance to continue the trial. But if Shanya died, then her life would be over. S3. If he sacrificed Shanya's life in exchange for a chance to continue the trial, then Zichun would definitely not be willing. Because if there was no Shanya, he would not be here today. So no matter what, Zichun would not sacrifice Shanya, even if he died. Kid, do you know what you are doing? The black-robed man glanced at Zichun. Of course I know. A mere level 9, you. Before the black-robed man finished speaking, Zichun took the initiative to attack. Dozens of black soul chains appeared beside Zichun and shot towards the black-robed man above. Zichun attacked. In everyone's eyes, this was a commendable courage. The youth snorted disdainfully. Other than commendable courage, Zichun's behavior had another meaning, and that was overestimating himself. Between level 9 and Soul Void Realm, other than the difference in strength of soul power, the biggest difference was the recognition of heaven and earth. One could fly, and the other could not escape the control of gravity. How could they fight? In the young man's eyes, Zichun's current actions were nothing short of childish. The black-robed man clearly understood the difference in soul power between the two of them, so he allowed Zichun's sneak attack to succeed before flying into the sky. Zichun's t-shirt was also lifted up. The black-robed man's laughter resounded through the sky. You should be the first Realm 9 in history to fall to your death. Under the nervous gazes of the crowd, the black-robed man who had flown into the air broke the soul power chains that bound him. His laughter reverberated through the clouds. It was as if he could see the scene of Zichun falling to his death. Many of the people below closed their eyes, revealing a sad expression as they could not bear to look directly. Right at this moment, cries of surprise rang out. The black-robed man's laughter came to an abrupt halt. Just as the soul power chains were about to break, Zichun leaped into the air and landed in front of the black-robed man. He stretched out his left hand and gripped the other person's wrist tightly. Amidst the exclamations, Zichun's expression became unprecedentedly cold. Everything was within his expectations. He threw out a punch. Soul annihilation. He had no intention of holding back at all. Moreover, he was so close that this move would definitely hit. When the black-robed man saw the black light on Zichun's fist, his expression froze slightly. He dismissed the thought of killing Zichun immediately and paused his attack. His left palm blocked Zichun's right fist. A powerful shock wave spread out in the air, forming a beautiful ripple. But right now, no one was in the mood to admire this scene because there was a great crisis in the air. If their leader Zichun was careless, his life would be in danger. A G of strange soul power surged into the black-robed man's body, bringing with it an aura of annihilation. A strange look flashed across the black-robed man's eyes. This G-force was very tenacious and very strange. It kept going deep into his body, trying to destroy his vitality. Unfortunately, this G-force was too weak. It was unable to do any damage to him. Your power is very strange, but it's a pity that it's too weak. If I let you advance to the Soul Void Realm, I'm afraid you can really threaten me. The black-robed man's cold voice came from the air, accompanied by strong confidence. The young man shook his head and said sarcastically, Idiot, I'll let you show off. Shanya covered her mouth as tears fell silently. If Zichun devoured her, he would definitely be able to win this time. However, the leader refused. In order to protect her, he would rather sacrifice himself. If one time doesn't work, then I'll try twice. Zichun clenched his fist again. The second attack landed, and his aura was even more powerful. But this time, the black-robed man did not block it. Instead, he clenched his fist and hit Zichun's head. Bang! S3. Zichun's head was thrown back and his body suddenly trembled. Die! Because he was holding the other party tightly, Zichun was not sent flying. The punch that he had accumulated landed on the other party's body. It was soul destruction. But how could it be easy for a level 9 to kill a soul void realm? This G-force was once again dissolved. Bang, bang, bang. Then, everyone saw the two of them standing in the air and attacking each other with their fists. Countless ripples spread towards the sky, forming countless enlarged light wheels until they reached the horizon and disappeared. The entire area was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Everyone, including those soul-devouring beasts, looked up at the sky without blinking. Both of them were still punching without any defense. They just went back and forth like this. During this period, the number of punches that the black-robed man threw out was more than twice that of Zichun. Zichun's mouth and nose were bleeding, and his cheeks were swollen. He looked very miserable, and his opponent was only in a slightly sorry state. Zichun's left hand grabbed the black-robed man's wrist tightly. No matter how much force he encountered, he did not let go. Because once he let go, he would die. Perhaps it was because of the weight, but the two of them were slowly descending during the battle. Let go. The powerful soul power exploded in Zichun's chest as the black-robed man said coldly. Zichun, whose eyes were already swollen into slits, smiled coldly and replied with a fist. It was just that this punch was much weaker than the previous one, and Zichun's entire body seemed to be hanging on the black-robed man's body. Many people covered their mouths and cried silently. Leader Zichun had done too much for them. Many of the soul hunters were unwilling to accept this, because they could only watch as their leader slowly died, and there was nothing they could do. The black-robed man attacked several more times, but Zichun seemed to have an immortal body. Even though his aura was much weaker, he was still counterattacking. Finally, the black-robed man was angry. Enough. There's no point in continuing to play like this. Next, I'll let you see the true power of the soul void realm. In the black-robed man's left hand, there was a flash of light. Then, a short sword appeared. Seeing this short sword, Zichun's eyes flashed. That was a real sword. It was the soul weapon of this world, and only those in the soul void realm could condense it. The black-robed man held the short sword tightly and stabbed it directly at Zichun's chest. This was the final fatal blow. Chapter 3702. Zichun saw the real short sword and heard the exclamations. Omega Gene C? C? Min? A? D? E? The short sword flashed with a cold light and went straight for X's chest with killing intent. Death was approaching. Logically speaking, Zichun should have felt despair at this moment. But he didn't. Not only did he not despair, he was even a little distracted. The biggest characteristic of the soul void realm is that you can condense your own soul weapon. Soul weapons are very sharp and can cut through the soul power of the world. Once the soul weapon is out, you will definitely die. Then what should I do? Wait for death? Is there no other way? Life and death are sometimes just a thought. When the soul weapon appears, it is also when the soul void realm is most confident and complacent, and this also means that they are careless. If you can seize this moment, then you have a chance of winning. What should I do? The first thing you need to do is to persevere until the soul void realm and use the soul weapon. At the very least, you can't die before that. Moreover, you have to ensure that you have sufficient energy in your body to be able to deliver a sure kill blow. I'm very curious. I've already become the leader, so why haven't you disappeared? Perhaps it's because you continue to use my name, allowing my remnant soul to exist. However, this method seems to work, but the final result is still up to you. Zichun, who had just broken through to the 9th realm, opened his eyes. He held the card tower world in his hand. To be distracted at this time, have you already lost all hope? A cold voice sounded in Zichun's ears. Zichun's swollen eyes suddenly burst out with countless cold lights. If I'm going to die, let's die together. A surging aura surged out from his right hand. The previously weak Zichun seemed to have ushered in a second explosion. His aura became extremely turbulent with a berserk intent. This G-aura caused the black-robed man to be slightly surprised, but that was all. His soul weapon was only inches away from Zichun's chest. It could be said that in the next moment, Zichun would die. Therefore, No matter how strong his aura was, it was nothing. Thunder. Zichen didn't seem to be aware of this. In an instant, the spiritual force that swirled around his palm erupted with countless bolts of lightning. This lightning was suffused with a faint golden light, and its aura was even more terrifying than before, as if it had the smell of annihilation. The black-robed man felt the aura of death that he hadn't felt in a long time. He was a little surprised, but he still wasn't afraid, because his attacks were faster. The people below could only see countless flashes of light, but they couldn't see what was happening. Only an extremely small number of people were able to witness that scene. However, those who could see clearly did not think that Zichen had any chance of winning. He's an idiot who knows how to endure. But so what? In the end, isn't he still going to die? The young man saw the situation clearly and still sneered. Who would have thought that at this moment, a clear and melodious voice would ring out? That was the sound of soul weapons colliding with hard objects. It was the Carter realm. It emitted light and blocked the soul weapon. At this moment, a voice came from the Card Tower realm. Attack. Lightning destroys heaven and earth. S3. Zichen's fist landed on the black-robed man's chest, and the power contained in the fist madly converged into the black-robed man's body. The violent energy surged, and the black-robed man was completely drowned by the lightning. His eyes widened, and his original confidence was gone. Then, he let out a blood-curdling scream, which was very mournful. Following that, the two people who were enveloped by the light fell to the ground at the same time. There was a loud boom. The ground shook, and countless smoke and dust flew. A huge pit appeared on the ground, and the two people laid in the pit motionlessly, without any signs of life. The group of soul-gnawing beasts was first stunned, then retreated. Their senses were extremely sharp, and they had already noticed that their leader's aura had disappeared. And disappearing meant death. All the soul-gnawing beasts retreated, which made the people of Qatari stunned again. Then, one by one, they reacted and madly ran outside. Is this a suicidal attack? The young man's expression changed, but looking at the people who rushed out, he was very anxious. If he let everyone save Zichen at this time, then he would have no more chance. Moreover, even if Zichen didn't die, he was on the verge of death. It was a good opportunity for him to reap the benefits of the battle. His figure flashed and disappeared from his original spot. When he reappeared, he was already beside Zichen. He saw Zichen. He was being pressed down by a huge, soul-gnawing beast, and only the front half of his body was exposed. That was the black-robed man's body. Since the body had appeared, it meant that he was already dead. The young man, who was already prepared to abandon this body, obviously didn't have to worry about being devoured. This was an unexpected surprise. The soul weapon short sword was thrown to the side, and the young man didn't look at it. Instead, it was the small black ball on the other side that attracted his attention. Presumably, it was this thing that had blocked that sure-kill attack. Looks like he's not an idiot. Although the young man said so, in fact, he was already very afraid of Zichen's mind. Just the fact that he tricked a soul void realm expert to death was terrifying. Why was he tricked to death? Because in a head-on battle, Zichen couldn't win. At this moment, Zichen was lying there motionless with his eyes closed. His aura was so weak that it was imperceptible. It was obvious that he was exhaling more than he was inhaling. Is he dead? The young man was a little suspicious, obviously not sure. So he leaned over to check carefully. Stop. Stop right there. S3. At this moment, a loud shout suddenly came from behind. It was Noah. He had already rushed over. The young man smiled disdainfully. The shackles that had once fallen on his body had disappeared. He could go back, and no one in the world could suppress him anymore. Moreover, he could leave with a single thought. It could be said that he had once again become that high and mighty lord who could completely look down on Noah. But before he left, he clearly had to do one more thing, and that was to completely kill Zichen and eliminate all future troubles. Thus, he continued to turn his head and look at Zichen. However, Zichen, whose eyes were originally closed, had opened his eyes at some point. Those swollen eyes were filled with cold killing intent. The young man secretly cursed and was about to leave this world. Too late. An indifferent voice sounded. Behind the young man, a big P's Y shadow appeared. In the next moment, the Y shadow fell and the young man disappeared. The Y shadow turned into a ghost. Its stomach was bulging like a big round ball. Shania and the rest had just arrived and happened to see this scene. All of them were extremely shocked, especially Noah. He knew the young man's methods. He didn't expect that the mysterious and powerful young man in his eyes would be swallowed just like that. However, he wasn't sad at all. Instead, he was happy, because during this period of time, he couldn't stand what the young man had done, especially when he kept having designs on Shania. The ghost burped. As an existence closely connected to their souls, he knew that the young man was indeed swallowed and couldn't escape. He smiled. All the arrangements played a huge role at the critical moment. The Soul Void Realm expert was really dead, and the young man was unsurprisingly swallowed by the ghost that had always wanted to devour him. At this point, everything was fine. The corner of Zichen's mouth raised into a smile. Chapter 3703. In BSB, he had become an ordinary person. He took a deep breath. Even though he had been through countless hardships, what had happened today was still beyond his expectations. How could he be crippled? What would he do in the future? He stared blankly ahead, his eyes lifeless. Where was the future? If he died in this battle, his soul might return. After all, this was only a trial, and his life might be in danger. However, if he failed the trial, his chances of survival were still very high. This was Zichen's conjecture based on the two sensations he had sensed. However, now that he had lost his cultivation and had become an ordinary person, how could he move forward? Other than helplessness, this leader, who had always been strong, calm, and had never lost confidence in himself, felt a deep sense of helplessness in his heart. In this strange world, no one could help him. S3. Zichen was in a daze for a long time before he let out a deep sigh. Then, he took a deep breath and closed his eyes. He tried again. However, he tried again and again. After dozens of attempts, Zichen finally confirmed that he had an extraordinary life force, but not the slightest bit of soul power. Finally, he opened his eyes. This time, his eyes were clear and his expression was calm, as if he had regained his previous confidence. If I can't do it once, I'll try again, Zichen thought to himself as he continued to try. Naturally, he was unwilling to give up. The next day, Zichen walked out of his room and went to the square. Then he gathered everyone. Seeing their leader, Zichen, many people were very excited, and they were all very grateful to Zichen. Noah and the others stood at the front, looking very excited. Zichen smiled faintly. His confident smile infected the crowd, causing quite a number of them to laugh as well. Let me first tell everyone a piece of good news. Our crisis this time has truly been resolved. As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd cheered again. Evidently, after such a long time, they had no doubts about Zichen. Since their leader said that there was no danger, then there was naturally no danger. Zichen looked at everyone cheering, and the helplessness hidden deep in his heart seemed to have been dispelled. After a while, seeing that the cheers were still there, Zichen gently raised his hand. The cheers disappeared, and everyone knew that their leader had something to say. The danger has been resolved, then I'll announce two more things. Zichen said, first, I will no longer be the leader of Kata. Kata will be managed by Shania of the 9 realms. This news was very surprising and caused quite an uproar. Even Shania herself was stunned. She immediately shook her head and said, Leader, this won't do? Zichen interrupted Shania with a smile and said, according to the rules, only the strong can be the leader. After the last battle, I have completely lost my cultivation and am no longer suitable to be the leader. This matter, the scene of the battle that day was still vivid in their minds. The leader, with the strength of the 9th realm, first killed the Soul Void Realm expert, then killed the youth who harbored evil intentions, saving everyone. But he lost his cultivation because of this. Now, he had to give up his position as leader. He saved everyone, but lost everything. Many people shed tears. Shania was sobbing. She said loudly, so what if you don't have your cultivation? You are still our leader. Because of her sadness, her voice changed. After she finished speaking, she lost her voice and cried bitterly. This was probably the saddest 9 realms in history. Noah stood there, not saying a word. S3, he knew that Zichun had paid a great price to win. After all, he had created a miracle and achieved a great feat, but he did not expect the price to be so great. Without his cultivation, wasn't it the same as being crippled? If he gave up his position as leader, what could he do in the future? Like those ordinary people, he could do things within his power to maintain his life. Many people around them were shedding tears. Their previously high spirits had now been replaced by grief. Noah took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Whether you have your cultivation or not, you are still our leader." That's right. You're still our leader. 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 Everyone shouted. Their faces were full of tears, and their voices were thunderous. Looking at everyone, Zichun felt a warm current flowing in his heart. He did not seem so helpless anymore. But he obviously could not continue to be the leader. This world had its own rules, and they would not be broken because of his appearance. He stretched out his hand again, and the surroundings became quiet again. Zichun smiled and said, "I'm very touched that everyone supports me. But I have to heal my injuries now, so I don't have time to manage kata. Also, I have something to tell everyone. The crisis is no longer here, so you can leave kata if you want to. Of course, if you want to stay, we will naturally welcome you with open arms." Today's news had shocked everyone so much that they were somewhat absent-minded. They did not react until Chief Zichun left. On the same day, Zichun moved out of the residence that was specially built for him and returned to the small house he stayed in when he first came here. No matter what others said, Zichun had made up his mind. He knew that his story had come to an end. In the future, he would be a witness to other stories. In those stories, other heroes would be born. Chapter 3704. In the Kata realm, Kata was floating in the air. This was a unique space. Zichun was also floating in the air here. "You're in a bad situation," Kata said as soon as he saw Zichun. "My soul power is about to disappear. Is there any way to recover it?" Zichun asked immediately. His eyes were filled with anticipation. Kata could see his situation at a glance. Perhaps he had a way to solve his problem. Kata shook his head and said, "Fist salute. I don't have a better way. Perhaps this is the normal state of birth, old age, sickness, and death." Birth, old age, sickness, and death? Zichun was stunned when he heard this. He asked in surprise, "What do you mean?" There are many leaders who started to lose their soul power after they were injured. They went from their strongest state to declining until they grew old. Here, there's no eternal life. "But I'm not one of those leaders, am I?" Kata said, "Your identity is special, but you're still under the rules of this world. The current situation is rare. No one knows what will happen to this body." Zichun thought for a while and said, "What if I refine that soul void? Will I be able to recover?" "It might be effective. You can give it a try." Obviously, Zichun didn't find a good way from kata. This made him a little depressed. When his soul returned, he realized that his last bit of soul power had disappeared. It was unrealistic to want to enter the kata realm again. Hence, Zichun left the room and went to find Shanya. He wanted to make a final attempt. Shanya brought out the dead soul void realm soul devouring beast corpse. She brought it to the god soul heaven grindstone and refined it. The life spirit fruits that were condensed shone with a golden light, like little Tai ys. A total of 45 dazzling fruits were condensed. Zichun took one of them and signaled Shanya to keep the other 44. Taking the fruit back to the room, Zichun swallowed it without hesitation. This was his only hope. As the fruit entered his stomach, it transformed into pure soul power, spreading throughout his body. At this moment, his vitality became extremely vigorous. Zichun began to circulate his cultivation technique and tried it over and over again. As time passed, his brows gradually furrowed, and the corners of his mouth began to twitch. Again, he murmured. After a while, Zichun said unwillingly, "We will definitely succeed." His cross-legged body began to tremble slightly. After another quarter of an hour, Zichun opened his eyes. His eyes were filled with fatigue, But more than that, they were filled with helplessness. He tried dozens of times, but the soul power didn't have any other effect other than making his life force more vigorous. In other words, he was truly crippled. He had become an ordinary person. He took a deep breath. Even though he had already experienced countless strong winds, the things that happened today were still beyond his expectations. How did it become useless? What should he do in the future? He stared blankly ahead, his eyes soulless. Where was the future? If he died in this battle, his soul might still return. After all, this was just a trial, and his life might be in danger. However, if he failed the trial, the chances of him surviving were still very high. This was Zichen's conjecture based on the two sensations he had sensed. But now, he had lost his cultivation and became an ordinary person. How could he move forward? In addition to helplessness, this leader, who was always strong and calm in everyone's eyes and had never lost his confidence, felt deeply helpless. In this unfamiliar world, no one could help him. S3. Zichun was in a daze for a long time, then let out a deep sigh. Then, he took a deep breath and closed his eyes. He tried again, but again and again. After dozens of attempts, Zichun finally opened his eyes. He was certain that he had an extraordinary life force, but not the slightest bit of soul power. This time, his eyes were clear, his expression calm, as if he had regained his previous confidence. If one time doesn't work, then I'll try again. Zichun thought to himself, then continued to try. Naturally, he was unwilling to give up. The next day, Zichun walked out of his room and went to the square, then gathered everyone. Seeing their leader Zichun, many people were very excited, and they were all very grateful to Zichun. Noah and the others stood at the front, looking very excited. Zichun smiled slightly, and that confident smile infected everyone, causing many people to laugh. Let me tell everyone a piece of good news, and that is, our crisis this time has really been resolved. As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd cheered again. Obviously, after such a long time, they had no doubts about Zichun. Since their leader said that there was no danger, then the danger was naturally gone. Zichun looked at everyone cheering, and the helplessness hidden deep in his heart seemed to be dispelled a little. After a while, seeing that the cheers were still not dispersing, Zichun gently raised his hand. The cheers disappeared, and everyone knew that their leader had something to say. The danger has been resolved, then I'll announce two more things. Zichun said, First, I will no longer be the leader of Kata, and Kata will be managed by Shanya of the 9 realms. This news was very surprising, and it caused quite a commotion. Even Shanya was stunned, and she immediately shook her head and said, Leader, this won't do. Zichun smiled and interrupted Shanya, saying, According to the rules, only the strong can be the leader, and after the last battle, I've completely lost my cultivation, so I'm no longer suitable to be the leader. This matter is decided. The surroundings suddenly became quiet, and everyone looked at Zichun, and the smiles on their faces froze. The scene of the battle that day was still vivid in their minds. Their leader, with the strength of the 9 realms, first killed the Soul Void realm, then killed the youth with evil intentions, saving everyone. But he had lost his cultivation because of this. Now, he had to give up the position of leader. He saved everyone, but lost everything. Many people shed tears. Shanya was sobbing, and she said loudly, So what if you don't have your cultivation? You're still our leader. Because she was sad, her voice changed, and after saying that, she cried bitterly. This was perhaps the saddest 9 realms in history. Noah stood there and didn't say a word. S3. He knew that Zichun had paid a great price to win. After all, he had created a miracle and achieved a great feat, but he did not expect the price to be so great. Without his cultivation, wasn't that the same as being crippled? If he gave up the position of leader, then what could he do in the future? Like those ordinary people, he could do things within his power to maintain his life. Around them, many people were shedding tears. Previously, they were in high spirits, but now they were sad. Noah took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, No matter if you have your cultivation or not, you're still our leader. That's right. You're still our leader. Leader, leader, leader. Everyone shouted. Their faces were full of tears, and their voices were as loud as thunder. Looking at everyone, Zichun felt a warm current flowing in his heart, and he did not seem so helpless. But he obviously could not continue to be the leader. This world had its own rules, and his appearance would not break them. He stretched out his hand again, and the surroundings became quiet again. Zichun said with a smile, "I'm very touched by everyone's support, but I have to heal my wounds now, so I don't have time to manage kata. Also, I have something to tell everyone. The crisis is over, so those who want to leave kata can go now. Of course, if you're willing to stay, we'll welcome you with open arms." Today's news had shocked everyone so much that they were a little absent-minded. They did not react until leader Zichun left. On the same day, Zichun moved out of the residence that was specially built for him and returned to the small house where he first came here. No matter what the others said, Zichun had made up his mind. He knew that his story had come to an end. In the future, he would be a witness to other stories. In those stories, other heroes would be born. Chapter 3705. The fragrance of the tea permeated the air, and Zichun gently took a sip. He closed his eyes and fell into a state of narcissism. But soon, he opened his eyes again because he felt soul power again. It was in the tea. This was something that went against the rules of this world. It was beyond common sense, but Zichun's perception was not wrong. He was very sure that he had indeed felt the soul power in the tea. This world is special. The fate spirit fruit can replace everything. But why do things still appear here? Is there a secret in this world that others don't know? Zichun made a second cup for himself. After confirming his judgment, he had an idea in his heart. Early the next morning, Liangbao came. He was very active. Zichun said, "Call Clark and Vern over. I need their help with something today." Liangbao nodded and ran away. Soon, the two of them came. This caused Dalter, who came later, to be shocked. S3, because the two of them were part of Kata's earliest batch of soul hunters, they had continuously grown up with Zichun. Currently, they were already at Realm 8. "Leader, what's the matter?" Clark asked. "Don't call me leader. Just call me Zichun. I need the two of you to come with me and take a look around the unfamiliar lands." The strange lands represented a place without soul-eating beasts. It occupied a large area, no less than the hunting area. Go to the strange lands? Clark was slightly taken aback. He thought that Zichun had other plans. Zichun nodded and said, "Yes, go to the strange lands. It might take a few days to come back." Hearing Zichun's words, the two of them understood. Although there were no soul-eating beasts in the strange lands during the day, no one could guarantee that there would be none at night. With the two of them protecting them, there would be no danger. Okay. The two of them did not have any objections and immediately nodded in agreement. When they left, Zichun brought a lot of cloth bags in addition to the fate spirit fruit. The five of them set off. Little Liangbao was the most excited. This was like the treasure hunt described in those stories, full of expectations. Because they had no intention of returning, the group continued to venture deeper into the forest until they reached an area where no one had set foot in. "Are you sure there's something good here?" Because he had guessed Zichun's thoughts, Dalter still had his doubts. After all, no one had ever set foot in this place. Ordinary people and soul hunters would not come here because there were no benefits. For Zichun to bring two level 8 cultivators with him in such a grand fashion was definitely unprecedented, and it was destined that there would be no one like him in the future. "Let's go and take a look. Perhaps there will be unexpected gains." Along the way, he saw some small trees that could be used as tea leaves. Zichun did not stop. As they went deeper into the forest, the sky gradually darkened. Zichun gestured for everyone to rest first. After eating the life spirit fruit, the sky turned completely dark. There were no stars or moon in the sky. It was pitch black. Clark started a fire, and the group gathered around it. "Cap, Zichun, is there really what you want in the depths?" Clark asked curiously. Zichun said, "I'm not sure, but from what I've seen along the way, I think it's very likely. Perhaps we can really find something amazing." As night fell, the four soul hunters were meditating. Zichun was lying there alone to rest. The cold wind blew in the night with a strange aura, but there was no danger. After a silent night, the five of them continued their journey the next day. Chapter 3706. In front of the five of them, a low tree appeared. The leaves were green like jade ornaments. The breeze swayed and countless fluorescent lights shone. Zichen looked ahead, and there was a touch of excitement in his calm eyes. There was an exclamation beside him. This time, as soul hunters, their perception was no longer dull. The small tree in front of them was surging with soul power, just like the fate soul fruit. How is this possible? Vern and Clark widened their eyes, feeling incredible. There are all kinds of strange things in the boundless world. This is nothing. Zichun walked forward. In fact, he wanted to say that the world was abnormal like before, but he changed his mind. Don't be stunned. Let's start picking these leaves. Zichun's eyes lit up as he looked at the short trees. It was as if he was looking at a treasure mine that had never been mined before. These small trees surged with soul power, so naturally, all the leaves were useful. But they were also divided into levels and good and bad. The leaves here alone could allow him to harvest a lot of fate soul fruits. Zichun stepped forward and picked all the best ones. Dalt, who had been proficient in this work, picked them for the second time. Liang Bao was the third time, and Vern and Clark were the fourth time. During this period, Zichun continued to walk forward, and a stream appeared not far away. The stream meandered downstream like a spiritual python. Zichun took a sip of the water here, and his soul power became more obvious. The effect of making tea with the water here would undoubtedly be better. In less than 2 days of travel, his guess was verified. What about the depths? What else would be waiting for him? Zichun was full of curiosity about the depths. This thing can be eaten. At this moment, Vern's excited voice sounded. He picked up a leaf and began to chew it excitedly. Zichun smiled and said, "It's too wasteful to just eat it." At this moment, Zichun felt that there would be endless things to do in the future. He stared at the depths. In the years to come, he would thoroughly explore this mysterious area as an ordinary person. Based on the speed of the five of them, it would be difficult for them to collect all the tea leaves here. Therefore, Zichun only collected a portion of it before the group of five turned back. When they returned to Kata, the sky was already dark. It took them exactly 3 days. The latest batch of tea leaves was ready, and Zichun named them for the first time. Soul Leaf Tea. There were a total of 5 levels, which represented the strength of one's soul power. Even the lowest level, the first level, could still allow one to sense the existence of soul power. The appearance of the soul leaf tea caused quite a commotion in Kata. This was the first time in their lives that they had seen something other than the life soul fruit that could increase soul power. The price was not high, and the sales were very good. On the second trip, Zichun was no longer alone. Instead, he took nearly 100 people with him. Clark and Vern were still in the team. In addition, there were dozens of soul hunters. This time, other than harvesting a large amount of soul leaf tea, Zichun also planned to build a temporary camp nearby for everyone to rest. In his heart, he already had a plan for the future. Those ordinary people were very willing to help Zichun because there was a reward, and it was far more than their usual reward. With more than 100 people working at the same time, it only took 3 days for a temporary camp to be built. During this period, the tall fence was extremely eye-catching. During these few nights, the chilly wind blew, bringing with it an extreme chill, but there was no danger. Therefore, Zichun let Vern and Clark go back first. It was a complete waste to leave such a powerful combat force here. Although the two of them were very willing and did not want any reward, how could Zichun have the nerve to use such top combat force for nothing? The temporary camp was built according to Zichun's plan. It was very sturdy because they would not stay here for a day or two, but for many years. After everything was arranged, Zichun gestured for everyone to start harvesting tea leaves. The level 6 Dalter taught everyone some essentials. Zichun took a few soul hunters to the depths of the forest to chop down some big trees. He drew pictures for the soul hunters, which were wooden barrels and handcarts, and asked them to make them first. Next, he was going to pull the water back, because the water here was also very extraordinary. After seeing the pictures, everyone was very surprised and began to make them. The wooden barrels were relatively simple, but the handcarts were more difficult. Fortunately, these soul splitters had plenty of time and could slowly figure it out. Obviously, the number of people was not enough, So Zichen asked Dalter to go back and bring more people over. The current Kata tribe had more than 20,000 people, and there were many ordinary people among them. Naturally, they could have as many as they wanted. Those soul hunters were also at Zichen's disposal. It could be said that in this area, only Zichen could do such a feat if it were other ordinary people. How could they mobilize so much manpower and material resources? Fortunately, Zichen was very far-sighted, and the temporary camp was large enough. After these people came here, they only needed to build a place to stay. Once they had a place to stay, everything else would be easy to deal with. Zichen left these things to the others to deal with, while he continued to go deeper. The things that he found with soul power were not ordinary, but compared to the life soul fruit, they were nothing. He was very clear about this, but compared to the soul hunters, there were more ordinary people here, which was a very large group. If they could be self-reliant, their lives would be greatly guaranteed. If they had found these things earlier, Shanya would not have been dragged down by the others in Kata. A few more days passed, and Zichen found a fruit with soul power. These fruits were everywhere, and there were quite a few of them, shining under the sun. Obviously, this was another big discovery. When he found these things with soul power, Zichen was also thinking about why these things appeared, and gradually found some clues. That was the soil. The soil here had soul power, and the things that grew in the soil naturally had soul power. Not far away, Zichen found a river, and the soul power in the river was much thicker than the one near the camp. What is going on? Zichen's heart was filled with doubt. The next day, he came to this place again, drank a mouthful of water, and then carefully sensed. He did not speak, and walked around nearby, then returned to the temporary camp. On the third day, Zichen came again, and drank water again, and looked around. It was the same on the fourth day. This situation continued for half a month. In this half a month, Zichen found some abnormalities, as if the water quality here was getting better, and the soul power in the water was getting thicker. After taking a big gulp, he actually felt full. After the temporary camp had stabilized, Zichen finally made up his mind to enter the depths of the camp to investigate. On the same day, he sent a message to Noah. In the Kata tribe, other than Shanya, he was the only other Realm 9. Chapter 3707. Noah had long known that Zichen had been very busy recently. Even the ordinary people had been busy as well. According to the people who came back occasionally, they had gained a lot. However, he did not expect that Zichen would ask him to go. He was very curious about what Zichen wanted to do. Ever since the previous incident, he was full of admiration for Zichen. Therefore, when Zichen asked someone to pass the message, Noah naturally had to go. In less than 2 hours, he arrived at the temporary camp that would take everyone 2 days to travel. This was Noah's first time here. At this moment, the scale of the camp had exceeded that of an ordinary small village. Many people were busy. He saw that some people were currently covering the wooden barrels that were filled with water. Then, they used a special method to seal the barrels. Some people were taking some wild fruits and placing them into bamboo baskets. Some soft leaves were placed at the edges of the bamboo baskets to prevent bumps along the way from damaging the soul power inside. Everyone was busy in an orderly manner, and this place was like a huge factory. When someone saw Noah, they were very surprised and immediately bowed to him. Noah nodded at everyone and asked, "Where is Zichen?" Someone pointed the direction to Noah. Noah nodded and thanked them. He followed the direction to find Zichen. When Noah saw Zichen, he happened to see Zichen putting life soul fruits into a cloth bag. He was a little puzzled. "You came at the right time. We should go." After seeing Noah enter, Zichen obviously sped up. "What are you doing?" Noah asked curiously. Zichen said, "Although there are fruits that can replace life soul fruits, in terms of quality, life soul fruits are still of a higher grade. This time, we might have to go out for a long time, so we have to prepare all the food in advance." "Go out for a long time? Where are we going?" Noah was even more curious. Zichen, who had about 100 life soul fruits, tightened the cloth bag and said, "The end of Stranger Lands." "What? The end of Stranger Lands?" Noah was puzzled. "There is nothing in Stranger Lands. Why are we going to the end?" Zichen walked out of the room with a cloth bag on his back. He pointed around and said, "You call this nothing? Noah said, I admit that your discovery is unique, but what's the point? Besides, you admitted it yourself that no matter what you found, it couldn't compare to the life soul fruit. Zichun was not angry that Noah looked down on his major discovery. Instead, he said calmly, you don't like it, but it doesn't mean that others don't like it. Do you know what kind of situation Kata was in when I first came here? Noah was silent. He had heard about what had happened to Kata at that time. When he learned that those people had abandoned Shanya, he was so angry that he almost went to Clark and Vern to settle accounts. Even so, he still made the two of them suffer a lot when they sparred later on. At that time, there were only 4 soul hunters in Kata, but there were more than 100 ordinary people. The harvest of Shanya and the others was barely enough to sustain Kata's survival. The premise was that there were no accidents. If there were any accidents, the entire Kata would be in danger of being destroyed. Zichun pointed ahead and said, but what if Kata had these things at that time? Those ordinary people could be self-reliant. Shanya and the others' harvest could be used to improve themselves. Her identity as a god's chosen would not be wasted. Looking at the silent Noah, Zichun said, I admit that the things here can't compare to the life soul fruit, but they can make ordinary people self-reliant. They don't have to rely on those soul hunters anymore. Zichun looked at Noah and said, this is a revolution. It can change this era so that no one will starve. Noah, who was once from Kata and had seen many small villages, naturally understood what Zichun meant. Because he understood, he admired him even more. For him, who was in the 9th realm, these were nothing. However, for ordinary people who could not become soul hunters, these were lives comparable to the life soul fruit. Once they could be self-reliant, no one could use them as bait anymore. Zichun turned his head and looked into the depths of the strange lands. He said, I believe that there must be something in the depths that I look forward to. Perhaps the answer I want is in the depths of the strange lands. Let's go. The two of them set off on their journey. Noah took the initiative to take the life soul fruit as they moved forward. During the day, the two of them saw some blooming flowers, rich fruits, flowing streams, and other things with soul power along the way. During this time, Zichun personally tasted them and concluded that they could be used as food for ordinary people. They stopped to rest at night and did not continue on their journey. On this day, Noah saw many things that he had never seen before. Early the next morning, Zichun signaled for Noah to lead him forward. His goal was no longer to see the things along the way, but to take a look at the depths. Noah led Zichun and began to move forward quickly. Strong winds whistled in his ears as everything flew behind him. 2 hours later, Noah paused for a moment before continuing forward. The scenery along the way was beautiful, but unfortunately, he had no time to enjoy it. Zichun looked at the mountains and rivers passing by below. His gaze kept moving, as if he was searching for something. Another day passed. The distance traveled today was dozens of times longer than the day before. At night, beside the bonfire, Noah asked, I don't know if this world has an end. Are you sure we want to go deeper? Zichun picked up a fruit that he had plucked and said with certainty, there will definitely be an end. All right then. After that, Noah never asked this question again. He just continued to lead Zichun deeper and deeper into the forest. Day after day, Zichun walked a very, very long distance under Noah's lead. If he were to walk alone, he would probably not be able to reach this place in a year or two. Along the way, he saw more things. Until one day, he saw a beast other than an insect running through the forest. A soul-devouring beast? Noah frowned slightly when he saw the little beast. He was not sure. Zichun shook his head and said, No, that's a little lamb with soul power. At this moment, his eyes were extremely bright, like the shining Xing Chun at night in another world. Noah did not pursue the matter. Instead, he continued to lead Zichun forward. Apart from the lamb, Zichun also saw other animals. They were all very common and all of them had soul power. A few days later, Zichun, who was squatting by the river, saw fish in the river. Although they were very small, they were real. The deeper they went, the more it looked like a real world. Noah's horizons were also broadened as he saw many strange things. They spent more than half a month moving forward every day, which was equivalent to several years of travel for Zichun. They finally reached the end of this world. After seeing the source of everything, Noah, a Realm 9 expert who had always been curious about everything, revealed a shocked expression for the first time. Chapter 3708. Noah stared ahead in shock. Zichen's expression also changed. At the end of the strange lands was a huge waterfall. The waterfall didn't come from the top of the mountain, but from the sky. It was as if there was a hole in the sky, and endless heavenly water descended from the sky. Below was a huge pool, and the waterfall fell from the sky with a rumbling sound. It was as if countless thunderbolts were exploding continuously. The water vapor that filled the air came from afar and gently patted one's face, making one feel refreshed. This is the end of the strange lands? Noah's voice was drowned out by the rumbling sound of the waterfall. Zichun walked forward. At this moment, he became very excited, because he had arrived at the end, or rather, the source. The various abnormalities that had happened in this world, and the appearance of countless foods that could replace the life spirit fruit, were obviously all because of this place. Noah followed behind Zichun, and the shock on his face did not disappear for a long time. As they got closer and closer to the waterfall, the rumbling sound became louder, as if it was about to burst their eardrums. The pool was very large, more than tens of thousands of feet wide. Zichun came to the edge, picked up the pool water, and drank a mouthful. He closed his eyes, and his face was filled with intoxication. The pool water contained unimaginable soul power, and it filled his body. The hunger from before instantly dissipated by more than half. At this moment, his body and mind were incomparably empty, and he was actually somewhat intoxicated. Noah came to Zichen's side and followed suit. In the past half a month, he had long gotten used to drinking water from Zichen. The water contained very obvious soul power. After drinking it, he could also feel the soul power in his body. He tried to refine it, but he did not succeed. He was a little puzzled. Zichen looked ahead and saw a very big fish. Suddenly, Noah's voice came from beside him, but he couldn't hear it clearly. Zichen turned his head to look at Noah. He was shouting something loudly, and at the same time, he stretched out his hand and pointed at the sky. Zichen raised his head and looked at the sky. He saw countless spots of light, like countless raindrops falling from the sky, but they didn't land on the ground. In fact, he hadn't even arrived in this world. Above his head, the sky seemed to have turned into a huge funnel, gathering all the light spots together and then leaking down from the center, turning into a huge waterfall. Zichen was shocked by this scene. He was unable to shift his gaze away for a long time. It wasn't until he felt a soreness in his neck that he came to his senses. He shook his head, stretched his muscles, and pointed at the pool. To be more precise, it was a big fish in the pond. His meaning couldn't be any clearer. As a Realm 9 expert, Noah nodded. Then, he leapt up, his figure hovering in the air above the pool for a brief moment. Then, he reached out with his right hand and grabbed into the water, soul force surging out from his palm. At the same time, he stretched out his left hand and lightly patted the surface of the water. As the ripples surged out, he borrowed the force of the ripples to turn back. In his right hand, he held a large fish that was over a meter long, wrapped in ropes made of soul power. At this time, Zichen had already retreated far away from the sound of the waterfall. After retreating, he picked up a pile of firewood and motioned for Noah to light the fire. At the same time, he went to the side to wash the fish. After that, Zichen began to grill the fish. Noah, who was at the side, watched curiously. After a while, the meat was cooked, and the fragrance of fish wafted out. Zichen gave half of it to Noah. Noah, who was eating fish for the first time, had his eyes shining. After eating half of it, he seemed to be unsatisfied. What's going on here? Seeing that Zichen didn't intend to grill another fish, Noah finally asked the question in his heart. Are you asking about the waterfall, or something else? Zichen looked at Noah. They were far enough away from the waterfall to be able to talk normally. Noah said, that waterfall and that rain of light? How did it come about? After thinking for a while, Zichen said, the waterfall is made of rain of light. You've seen that. As for the origin of the rain of light, I suspect it has something to do with me, Shanya, or the two of us. Noah still didn't understand. Both Zichun and Shanya were staying in Kata. How could it have something to do with the rain of light here? That's just my guess. I don't know the specific reason. Zichun said, You've drunk the water there before. Did it help you? Noah shook his head and said, The soul power is very strong, but it's a pity that it doesn't have any effect. Zichun wasn't too surprised. This was normal. He looked back at the huge waterfall. This was a place with good feng shui. If he could stay here for a long time, the benefits would be great. However, this was obviously unrealistic because Noah was the main force of Kata. He couldn't stay here for too long. Let's go for a walk nearby. Zichun stood up and walked into the distance. There was a forest outside the waterfall. Beyond the forest, there were mountains and streams around the pond. What's that sound? Noah heard an unusual sound when he came to the forest. It's the sound of birds. Zichun answered calmly. This world was becoming more and more complete. Everything had started from nothing. During this time, Zichun saw some small animals. These animals looked similar to the wolves, tigers, and leopards in the outside world. However, they hadn't grown up yet. It was only a matter of time. Perhaps they would become the ancestors of their respective tribes in the future. As they continued forward, Zichun saw some fruits. Noah immediately rushed up, plucked a few, and began to eat. He had changed a lot in the past half-month following Zichun. Zichun also picked a fruit and ate it. He didn't stop walking. He saw many fruits and many small animals. He walked and stopped, sometimes squatting down to dig up some soil. Noah followed beside Zichun and ate everything that he thought was edible, including a lot of leaves. If we bring these back, we can feed almost all the ordinary people, right? After Zichun's explanation, Noah also knew the importance of these things to ordinary people. However, he shook his head as soon as he said that. It took him more than half a month to get here. How long would it take for others to get here? Therefore, this idea was unrealistic. However, when Noah saw the things there, he felt a sense of unwillingness in his heart. Do you have a way to bring them back? He looked at Zichun and asked. Zichun didn't answer. Instead, he suddenly sped up. Noah followed him. He was a little curious. Could it be that Zichun had discovered something else? After walking for about 100 feet, Zichun suddenly stopped. Noah almost bumped into Zichun. Zichun looked ahead. Noah walked around Zichun and also looked ahead. A golden light appeared in his vision. It was bright and dazzling. Chapter 3709. It was a small green tree that was less than half a meter tall, but it was like a jade tree, emitting a sparkling light. And on the tree, there were 3 fruits. The fruits were golden and had a very bright luster, like a miniature version of Y. Of course, Noah was more willing to describe it as a life spirit fruit. Back then, when Zichun killed the soul void realm soul-devouring beast, the fruit after refining was golden and looked exactly the same as the J in front of him. Right now, Shanya was refining those fruits in an attempt to break through, and he was lucky enough to obtain the J fruit, which allowed him to improve greatly after refining it. The golden fruit in front of him was exactly the same as the golden life spirit fruit J. The only difference was that one was condensed from the divine soul heaven grindstone, while the other grew on a tree. Sensing the soul power fluctuations from the 3 fruits, Noah felt a little dry. Is this a life spirit fruit? Of course not, Zichun said with certainty. Unlike Noah, Zichun's attention was more on the tree roots and the surroundings. S3. This was a small pool, less than 10 feet in radius, and the pool water reached the tree roots. He bent down and drank a mouthful of the pool water. His soul power was very strong. Then he walked forward, and the water in the pool went up to his feet, and he swam to his feet. The early morning pool water immediately became turbid. Zichun walked to the small tree step by step and plucked a golden fruit. He took a bite. It was very crispy and sweet. After entering his stomach, there was a G of pure soul power that entered his body and did not dissipate for a long time. Zichun's eyes suddenly lit up, as if he had a feeling that he had not felt in a long time. It was as if his soul power was about to recover. However, when he tried to sense it again, he still found nothing. In the blink of an eye, this golden fruit had been eaten clean by Zichun. There was soul power rippling in his body, but he could not convert it into his own. It was as if there was a funnel in his body that leaked out all his soul power. Noah stood there and watched this scene quietly. Nothing. Zichun was a little disappointed. Then, he plucked the other 2 fruits and threw one at Noah. Unexpectedly, Noah flicked the fruit back to Zichun. Zichun was a little surprised. Noah said, "I'm eating these for free. Also, I have a strange feeling that these fruits belong to you." Zichun didn't say much. He felt that there were some abnormal fluctuations in his soul power, and he needed to verify it again. He ate the second one. That feeling was vague, and in the end, it disappeared without a trace. Or it could be said that it was an illusion. Zichun ate the third pill, and the result was the same. He turned around and walked out of the pool, saying, "Let's go. Let's keep looking." In the past, when Zichun ate the golden life spirit fruit, he did not have such a strange feeling, but this fruit did. If he could find more of these strange fruits, he might be able to recover his soul power. If soul power could really be recovered, then who would be willing to be an ordinary person? Noah saw hope in Zichun's eyes, so he accompanied Zichun in his search. Sigh. Sitting on the mountain peak, Zichun looked at the green ocean in the distance and couldn't help but sigh. It had been 3 days, and not a single golden life spirit fruit had been found. Noah stood behind Zichun and looked at the dejected Zichun. "This place is very big. As long as we continue to search, we will definitely find something." Zichun shook his head and said, "No, we have to go back." Chapter 37:10. Countless light rain fell from the sky. This was the fastest and fiercest rain of light. In the Kata tribe, everyone walked out of their rooms and bathed in the light rain with an intoxicated expression. Even the infants who were still in their swaddling clothes were included. Light shone between heaven and earth, as if there were countless fireflies. In the unfinished manner, Zichun sat beside a small tree and bathed in the light rain. The light rain entered his body, causing his vitality to flourish even more. However, the soul power that had disappeared still did not recover. Zichun was not disappointed because this was within his expectations. The light rain fell from the sky and covered the entire Kata tribe. Because he had been to the end of the unfamiliar lands, Zichun had a deeper understanding of this world. From another perspective, the light rain could not only raise everyone's realm, but it could also permanently change the environment. For example, with the irrigation of spiritual power, the people living on this land would definitely benefit from it as time passed. In this regard, the Noah tribe had provided a realistic example. The awakening rate of the soul hunters in their tribe was much higher than in other places. That was because the God's soul heaven grindstone was constantly releasing soul power, changing everything in the tribe. Amidst the rain of light, a glowing figure appeared. It was Shanya. After breaking through to the soul illusionary realm, she obtained her first ability. In the Kata tribe, cheers rose and fell. Shanya turned to look at Zichun. Their gazes met from afar. In the next moment, Shanya flew towards Zichun. She landed in front of Zichun. "Congratulations." Zichun smiled and stood up. "How is it?" Shanya looked at Zichun and asked. Zichun shook his head and said, "My soul power has not recovered, but I believe it's only a matter of time." "Really?" Shanya was doubtful of Zichun's words. She was worried that Zichun was just comforting her and did not really have a solution. Zichun nodded. "Of course. Don't worry, my soul power will eventually recover." After breaking through to the soul void realm, did you have other feelings? Shanya thought for a while and said, "It does feel weird, but I don't know if it's good or bad." "Oh, how do you feel?" After a slight hesitation, Shanya said, "It's just that this world seems too small." "Too small?" Zichun was slightly stunned. Shanya said again, "It seems that there is another place that is calling me." The world was too small, and there were other summons as well. Zichun could vaguely guess the reason. It seemed that Hunsu was the pinnacle power of this world. This was almost the same as Ascension. He believed that as long as Shanya was willing, she could leave this world. "Go and call Noah over. I have a few questions to ask him," Zichen suddenly said. Looking at Zichen's serious expression, Shanya nodded and flew away. A moment later, the two arrived. The light rain was still continuing. Zichen could see the excitement on Noah's face. Clearly, he had obtained a lot of benefits. What's the matter? Noah walked to Zichen's side. That young man from before, how did he find you? Zichen asked. Noah was slightly stunned, somewhat puzzled. Why did he mention that young man all of a sudden? But Zichen clearly did not want to settle old scores with him. Hence, he said, he suddenly appeared, and his methods were extremely powerful. At that time, he gave me a fright. Don't miss out on any details. Tell me what you know in detail. Hence, Noah recounted the process of meeting the young man in detail, as well as some of the conversations. His words were filled with killing intent towards Zichen. At the side, Shanya's expression gradually turned ugly as she listened. Noah was also a little embarrassed. Zichen listened quietly. His expression did not change at all until Noah told him everything. He muttered to himself. Noah and Shanya stood there in silence. And Noah, who was at level 9, actually felt a sense of pressure from Zichen. Zichen had already become an ordinary person. Logically speaking, such a situation should not exist. In the end, he attributed this pressure to his own guilt. The silent Zichen suddenly looked at Noah and said, in that case, when he left for the last time, he suddenly appeared again and lost his original calmness and confidence. He also did not leave for no reason and followed you to Kata just like that?
Yes.
Noah nodded and said, regarding this question, I suspect that he was under some kind of restriction and could not leave. Your guess is right. Perhaps this restriction is related to the Dead Soul Emptiness Realm expert. Zichen looked up at the sky and said, it seems that not all Soul Emptiness Realm experts can reach this place. This also explains why the young man was so happy after that guy died. Moreover, until now, no other Soul Eater clan has come for revenge. Noah still did not understand, but Shanya seemed to have guessed Zichen's meaning and her expression changed. Zichen looked at Shanya and said, how many of those golden fruits do you have? Shanya said, 25 more. There were more than 40 in total. Zichen ate one, Noah ate a few, and the rest were with Shanya. Now it seemed that Shanya did not consume much and had already broken through the realm. Zichen said, next, you should properly comprehend this realm. As for those fruits, give them all to Noah. You should also give him the position of leader. Shanya did not ask for the reason and nodded and did as she was told. Just as she had said before, Zichen would always be the leader in her heart. This is not very appropriate, right? Those fruits were not easy to come by. Noah, on the other hand, was a little hesitant. If it were him in the past, he would naturally be eager and would even try to snatch it. However, after being with Zichen for so long, his mentality had changed quite a bit, and he knew how to think for others. Zichen said, this is the only way now. If you want to leave, you two have to leave together. You can take care of each other on the way. If my guess is right, maybe you can see that young man again. When that time comes, he will not hold back. That young man, isn't he dead? Noah asked in surprise. That should only be one of his clones. He's definitely still alive, and he's even more powerful than you can imagine. Then why do we have to leave? Isn't it good to stay here? Noah said again. When you reach the Soul Emptiness realm, you will know. On the same day, Noah became the new leader of Kata. 2 years later, Noah successfully broke through, and the Kata tribe ushered in a new reign of light. Shanya felt the calling and became stronger. However, she waited for another year. In this year, she helped Zichen take care of the small tree every day. However, there was still no improvement and the leaves were still yellow. Noah familiarized himself with his realm for a whole year. It was time to leave. Shanya looked at Zichen reluctantly. Go. There is a wider world waiting for you. Shanya nodded and left with tears in her eyes. She would always carry out Zichen's orders and would never go against his words. Noah cupped his fists towards Zichen before he cupped his fists towards the others and said, everyone, we'll meet again.